Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshor Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tenamine Akhanda Mandala Akaram Yena Vyaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye. Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarvavastha Gatopi Va Ya Smaret Pundarikaksham Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchi. Hope you're all doing fine this evening. We'll just dive straight in, my friends. So today we will look at the story of King Parīkṣit. Some of you have heard this before. I sometimes share it on, in yoga studios at the end of a Yoga Sutra workshop. Parīkṣit is the grandson of Arjuna and therefore grandnephew of Krishna, Sri Krishna. All the warriors, except 8, are killed in the great Mahabharata war, including Parīkṣit's father, Abhimanyu. He was unfairly killed, and the Pandavas have also left their bodies. Shri Krishna has gone back to his abode, and Parīkṣit is now the emperor. And of course, he's grown up, hearing, obviously, his his father Arjuna, all the wonderful feats of his father. He never met his father, and Krishna had also left. Although Parīkṣit did have a darshan of Krishna in the womb of his mother, because he's the last surviving member of the Kuru dynasty. Everybody else has been exterminated by the war, by the decree of Sri Krishna. The background story, of course, is that all the asuras, the malevolent celestial beings that are malevolent, the asuras. And the background story is that there's a sort of cosmic struggle between the suras and the asuras, the good celestials against the demoniac ones. The asuras have lost, they need to hide out, they flee, and they come down to the earth and they take birth in the royal families of India and in the warrior castes. So that's why the war, then Vishnu prays to, then Brahma, the four-headed secondary creator, prays to Vishnu. All of these asuras are running amok. They're creating havoc on the earth to the extent that Brahma has to go to Vishnu and ask for a divine incarnation for intercession. And that's the reason one of the reasons, or at least the reason given in the Mahabharata and the Puranas, for Krishna's incarnation. So he's come to eliminate all of the asuras, to get them off the earth dimension. And that's why the war is orchestrated. That's the sort of background story. In any event, war is over at this point. Parīkṣit was in the womb. He was the last surviving member of the family, and one of the 3 on the other side that survives. There is Duryodhana, and there's Ashvatthama, and then there's another 3rd warrior on the Kuru side, and they're so, they've lost everything. Yeah, actually a bit like our modern situation, actually. And in just sheer anger and spite, Ashvatthama releases a Brahmastra. It's kind of like a heat weapon, actually. I don't know, call it, it's a heat weapon. So it's like a nuclear weapon, right? I don't know, but anyway, there's heat weapons, water weapons. and he unleashes it into the womb of Parīkṣit's mother. And I forget her name. And there's two versions of the story. One is that it kills him in the womb. That's the Mahabharata epic version. And then Krishna enters the womb and brings him back to life, brings the Atman back into the body. The version in the other version is that it doesn't kill him. Krishna enters the womb and wards off the nuclear weapon. So Parīkṣit sees Krishna in the womb. He's an embryo. So he has an undeveloped mind. But what does that matter? His consciousness contacts the Supreme Being, and it's just, and he has this just amazing experience. And so one of the etymologies of his name is Parīkṣit, means to look around. So one of the stories explaining his name is the minute he's born, he's looking around, as a little baby, right? Looking around. Where is he? Where was that? Of course, in his own whatever baby embryonic way of formulating this thinking. We don't know how that would have, in terms of his intellectual abilities, but he's looking around, trying to see where is that wonderful divine being that appeared in the womb. So Parīkṣit, so he's a warrior. Warriors are allowed to hunt. Okay, this is the two kinds of yoga: Patanjali yoga, which is an action yoga, and there are rules that pertain to that. And then there's the karma yoga, action in the world yoga, and there are different rules. So in the karma yoga, there's, Patanjali is total withdrawal from the world, pratyahara, complete and utter, and even withdrawal from the internal world. But the karma yoga rules are different, and there's civic order. People perform their civic functions. To make it yoga, of course, they have to give up attachment to the fruits. But nonetheless, there is professional activity in the civic order, and civic orders requires legislation, requires law enforcement. So there is a martial and also defense from outside attack. So there's a martial order, the kshatriyas, and they're allowed to hunt. Okay, so often there's yogis say, well, how come Krishna's telling Arjuna in the Gita to fight, but yeah, what about ahimsa? Two different sets of rules, my friends. Two different kinds of yogas. One is civic and one is renunciatory, acivic, trans-civic, forest. So once taken up his bow, Parīkṣit set out to the forest to hunt. Now they're not allowed to kill cows and stuff, but they are allowed to hunt wild animals and deer as well. So if they because they're warriors, they have to practice their archery. They also have to control the animals in the forest, but only the kshatriyas. Brahmanas are not allowed to hunt, not allowed to eat meat. Vaishyas neither. And there's certain exceptions for the Sudras, the workforce. There are practices, there are certain ways that one can eat meat, especially in the Durga in the Kali traditions, and offer it to goddess Kali. Anyway, let's not get into all of that. I'm just explaining why he's hunting. This is the acceptable dharma for royalty. So while he was pursuing a deer, he became extremely tired, hungry, and thirsty. So he's in the forest, and he gets overwhelmed by raga, the desire for, he's hungry and he's thirsty. That means he has a raga, he has a desire for food and drink. And he's tired, so he has a raga for a place to rest. So these are ragas, which can overwhelm the mind with rajas. And raga is rajas, same thing. So when the mind is overwhelmed with rajas, then it doesn't think clearly. It's agitated, and therefore clarity is compromised. Okay, so I'm just sort of giving a map for the story. Not finding any body of water, he entered Shamika's hermitage, the sage Shamika. And he saw the sage sitting peacefully, his eyes closed. Okay, he's a real yogi, Patanjalian style. This is the Patanjali world-renouncing yoga. Okay, Parīkṣit, great bhakta yogi, but he's an action in the world bhakta yogi. Great bhakta means he's a devotee of Lord Vishnu. His mind is always fixed on Lord Vishnu. So, but Shamika, on the other hand, had attained the state beyond the three states of consciousness: waking, dream, and deep sleep. Right now, we're reminded of the Mandukya Upanishad. That's all about the four aspects of Om. Aum, and this and that which is beyond, and the four states of consciousness are correlated with that. So there are four states of consciousness. So the three are the ones we know: waking, dream, and deep sleep. And then there's the fourth, called the Chaturtha, the fourth, just called the fourth, which Patanjali, as we know, calls it Nirbija, calls it Asamprajñāta, although I don't think he uses the term Asamprajñāta, he uses the term Samprajñāta, and we infer, the tradition infers that if there's a Samprajñāta, there's an Asamprajñāta in order to match Sabija, Nirbija. I don't think Patanjali actually uses the word Asamprajñāta, that technical point. But he'd reached the fourth state, the state beyond the three. And so was completely inactive, right? Pratyahara, I mean, that's just the fifth limb of yoga. So his senses, prana, right? Pranayama, life airs, mind and intelligence, right? So that's chitta vritti nirodha. What's the chitta? Mind and intelligence. Restrained, what's that? Nirodha. So in your state of chitta vritti nirodha, you're not aware of anything. Your senses are not transmitting information to consciousness. Consciousness is absorbed in its own nature, therefore it's not conscious of sounds, sights, smells, and touches and feelings. So he's in the state, so he's not going to hear anything. His dreadlocks were disheveled. This is the original dreadlocks, my friends, where you just you go to the forest and you just pile them up, pack it with cow dung. Not the ones you get for $200 in Brooklyn, not those. These are the dreadlocks of the sadhus. So they were disheveled, and he was draped in a deer skin. I've never found a traditional explanation for the deer skin. There's a 19th century one, which is rational. In the 19th century, that deer skin has a property that repels bugs, and that sounds reasonable. But where do the yogis get the deer skins? We obviously they don't kill deer. I've never had anybody explain. It goes back to the old Vedic times when you sat on kusha grass and a deer skin to perform Vedic rituals. It goes back. But if you see pictures, maybe some of you have seen the picture of like Shivananda, for example, even Vivekananda, and they're sort of portraitures, and you see them sitting. Obviously, they're disciples of sort of get their guru. Come on, Guruji, we need a photo, and they get it all lined up, and you can imagine how that would have taken place. And they're sitting on these tiger skins. So this is where it comes from. It's actually in the Gita as well. So I'm surprised I've never found anything in traditional commentary. I mean, obviously 19th century is modern, really. But explaining that, I know the other thing you sit on kusha grass goes way back to the Vedic culture. So that's auspicious. That's what we call in English elephant grass. But tiger skin, let's not worry about it. It's interesting little cultural thoughts. Draped in a deer skin, the king, whose throat was dry, requested water from the sage who was in that state, right? Fourth state, Nirbija Samadhi. The Upanishads call it Chaturthi. They don't even try to name it. Why don't they name it? Because any names refer to objects names refer to perceivable objects. You name something that you perceive and give it a name. You see something, you say, well, let's call that a tree, let's call that a flower, let's call that a pot, let's call that a plate. So Nama Rupa is the Upanishads. So the Rupa is a form and you give it a name, but the Atman has no Rupa. And the Atman is not perceived by the senses. So what are you going to call it? So Patanjali just calls it Nirbija, that it's something that doesn't leave a seed in the mind. There's no bija. Everything else leaves a seed in the mind. So if I see a tree, I look at it and it imprints itself on my chitta, and that's a samskara, also known, which is a bija. So therefore, even the high states of samadhi have bijas. They're still using the mind. If they're using the mind, they're leaving a trace in the mind. So it's a sabija. But so he just says nirbija. He also doesn't give it a name. It's just something that doesn't leave a trace on the mind because it's transmental. So it can't leave a trace. It pervades the mind without leaving a trace on it, like air pervades the room, but it doesn't leave a stain on the wall, for example. So the Upanishads just call it the fourth. They don't even want to try to play around metaphysically and say, it doesn't leave a trace. They just say, let's call it the fourth. It's the fourth. Yeah. So now he's asking water, right? Because he's rajasic. When rajas means no clarity, you don't have clarity. Your desire is Your desires are confusing your ability to perceive a situation accurately. That's sattva. Tamas, you perceive it completely incorrectly. You take a dharma to be a dharma, everything's flipped the wrong way round. But rajas, you're confused. You can't see it clearly. But why are you confused? Because your desire is agitating. It's making its presence felt. It's the most prominent thing in the mind. So it's not letting you see other things clearly. So he was in a state of raga. Sattva allows you to see a thing for what it is. That's one of the features of sattva, clarity and perception. Krishna says in the Gita, all the gates of the body are luminous. So he's not, so he requests water from the sage who was in that state. Well, we didn't even hear him. If he's in there, bija, he doesn't hear the sound vibration. Is not entering his ear. Well, it is. It's entering his ear and leaving an imprint in the mind, but consciousness is not connected to the mind, so it's useless. It's like the phone ringing in the house when you're outside. What's the point? The phone is ringing, but no one's listening to it. So upon not receiving a straw seat and not being offered sweet words or a hospitable beverage, or indeed anything at all, if a guest comes to your house, my friends, in Vedic culture, you have to offer something. At the very least, if you have nothing, sweet words. Nothing, right? Not even sweet words. The king, feeling he'd been disrespected, became angry. So this is what happens with raga. When it's frustrated, it becomes tamas. So whenever you're angry, scratch the surface and you'll see that there's a desire, a frustrated desire lurking right underneath the anger. So this is how the gunas work. So, Brahmana, okay, so the story is being told by Shuka, by Sutta, doesn't matter, by Sutta to the sages. The king's anger and resentment suddenly erupted against the Brahmana, the yogi Brahmana. He was a real Brahmana. He was a real Brahmana, not a caste Brahmana. He was a Brahmana who was absorbed in Brahman. His rajas spilled over for a moment into tamas. This had never happened before to the king. He's a great bhakta. He's a yogi. He's just having a rajasic moment. But he's a great soul. Parīkṣit, come on, he's a grandnephew of Krishna. But he had become compromised by hunger and thirst. So this is us, my friends. And when we let our desires become too intense, then we can't see anything clearly, and we're subject to become angry. If you're an angry person or going through an angry period, and so forth, it's nothing other than frustrated desire. That is yoga philosophy, psychology. So in this tamasic state of anger and resentment, as he was leaving, the king placed a dead snake with the tip of his bow on the shoulder of the Brahmana sage out of anger, and returned to his city. So that's very polluting, and he knows Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are all about purity and and taboo and rich. The Brahmins are caste conscious and purity conscious and so forth. This particular Brahma Shonika is a yogi, so he's not really a ritualistic Brahmana, but still. He's making a kind of a statement. He puts a dead snake around the Brahmana. And off he goes. And then he's having a little bit, now he starts thinking a little bit. So Rajas maybe settles down a bit and he says, were his eyes closed because he had closed down his senses? So all of a sudden he realized, oh, wait a minute, had he done pratyahara? Was he in a yogic state? So he starts having second thoughts afterwards. Or was it rather really a feigned state of samadhi to interact with me, a lowly member of the Kshatriya warrior caste? So he's saying, was he just putting it on because he's a pure yogi, and I'm a Kshatriya, even though I'm the emperor of the world, the known world, and even though I'm the grandson of Arjuna and grandnephew, well, I'm still a warrior. I'm hunting. I'm engaging in impure activities. I have my bow, maybe I killed some creature. So, maybe this pure yogi following ahimsa and following the yamas didn't want to have anything to do with me. And so he pretended to be in samadhi. So he's asking this question. Do you see how much philosophy is in all of that, my friends? Do you see how these stories are jam-packed with, we get the chance to explore, yoga psychology, codes of dharma. We've just read 5 verses. And they're packed with information. This is what the Puranas are. They're not just silly stories. They are vessels, transmitters of cultural and yogic and all kind and dharmic and jnana information. I hope you see how rich they are. So, of course, they need to be unpacked. And then, so normally you would be reading this with a commentary, or, somebody would be unpacking it. So on we go. While this had been taking place, the Brahmana's son, okay, now the Brahmana was a real Brahmana, okay? I don't know where this verse comes from. It's quoted in Madhvacharya's commentary, 12th century. Brahmanam, Brahman veti, sa Brahmanaha. The one who knows Brahman, that one is a Brahmana. So clearly from the word Brahmana, clearly you can see that etymologically it's connected with the word Brahman. So Madhva says, a Brahmana is the one who knows Brahman. And then we have this sort of going back to the Upanishads. There is references, the story of Shvetaketu and his father. We know that there were Brahmins who were caste Brahmins who were not learned, who just were ritualists and did it for money. So that kind of a Brahmana obviously survived till the present day. But there, as early as the Upanishads, there's the sense that there's the real Brahmana and then these ritualistic Brahmins who are not learned and they just chant mantras to make a living. So that tension, that sort of schism between a caste Brahmana and a genuine Brahmin goes back to the earliest texts. So anyway, here, the father's a real Brahmana in the sense that he knows Brahman. What does that mean? He's in the fourth state. Well, what's the fourth state? Brahman. You give it another name. Call it the fourth, call it Nirbija, call it Brahman. He's in the state of Brahman. But his son isn't. His son is a caste Brahmin. So he'd been out playing with other young children. Although he was but a boy, he was very powerful. Right? So he had some kind of powers. Right, remember, this is the very beginning of Kali Yuga. So the age, we're now 5,000 years in. But that was just on the other side of the Dwapara Yuga. So, Brahmins, according to these traditions, still, even if they were caste Brahmins, nonetheless, they would, they performed their rituals purely, and they had powers. So they could utter curses. They had the power of Vedic mantras. So they had, they had mastered the arts of chanting these Vedic mantras. So, but some of them are like Atharva Veda mantras and malevolent. The Atharva Veda, the fourth Veda, it's very different from the other three Vedas. It has spells and incantations. Then sometimes they say, even the tradition, there's Trivedi and Chaturvedi. There's traditions which recognize three and the traditions that recognize four, even the names now. They're Brahmin names to this day in India. Trivedi means the three Vedas, and Chaturvedi, which is, in Bengal, there's a lot of Chaturvedis. So anyway, the son then was a caste Brahmin, not one who knows Brahman like its father. We get this in the Upanishads. We get Shvetaketu as a punk kid goes off to learn the Vedas, goes off to Gurukul, comes back, and his father says to him, "Oh, here you are, all proud, and with your knowledge of Vedic mantras and ritualism. Do you know that Upanishad by which?" How does he frame it? Anyway, he sort of poses a yogic question to the son, and the son can't answer it. And so right there we get this sort of, between a father and a son, we get this, we're given this sort of sense that there's a difference between a real Brahmana who knows Brahman and a caste Brahman. We get the same sense here, okay? So if you're interested in that Shvetaketu story, I think it's in the Chandogya Upanishad. Right, so he'd been out playing with other children. Although he was but a boy, he was very powerful. When he heard that his beloved father had been subject to an offense by the king, obviously a real yogi, what does Krishna say in the Gita? You rise above honor, dishonor, respect, disrespect, hot, cold, the dvandvas. That's a yogi, never takes offense. All right, but if you think you're the caste, if you're of avidya, asmita, and your asmita is, I am a brahmana. Asmi, ko asmi, who am I? Brahmana asmi, I'm a brahmana. So that's your avidya, that's your asmita. So you're going to identify with your body and your caste and so forth. And then that's going to and therefore you're going to feel offenses, and you're going to feel happiness and distress in relation to your caste and your body and your mind. So that's the kid. So he was he subject an offense. He uttered these words then and there. Now he has power. It's still early days. Now, could they say in the Kali Yuga, the Brahmins have no power, they can't curse, they can't chant Vedic rituals, they don't know how to chant mantras, they're useless. In fact, it even says the asuras take birth as Brahminans in the Kali Yuga. The demons take birth. The Puranas say that. Oh, I'm sure they're not going to be very happy if you say that if you go to a temple in India and say that to a Brahmin. But there's still some wonderful Brahmins around, so clearly not everybody. Anyway, we're meandering. So he says, just see the adharma of the rulers, who are like crows who have grown fat from eating the oblations meant for sacrifice. In other words, the warriors are like, crows are not supposed to, you put the foodstuffs for the sacrifice, but if a crow comes along and eats it, well, that contaminates the sacrifice. So this dirty kshatriya has contaminated my pure father. This is offense against their masters by servants who are doorkeepers like dogs. So the kshatriyas are supposed to protect the Brahmins. The Brahmins, of course, are supposed to be renounced, just like his father was, living in a mud hut. Anyway, so there he is, insulting the king. A lowly kshatriya, warrior, is clearly ordained. So here we see some of this sort of caste consciousness on display here. Both the caste consciousness, and again, I'm repeating myself, and the father, a genuine Brahmin, genuinely in pursuit of the, in his case, he's actually experienced Brahman. So a lowly kshatriya is clearly ordained, right? Meaning the Dharma Shastras, the Dharma Sutras, is a body of text called the Dharma Sutras, like Yoga Sutras, Vedanta Sutras, Dharma Sutras. So that's where it would be ordained to be the doorkeeper of the Brahmana caste. It's supposed to protect them, stand at the door and protect the Brahmanas as the Brahmanas do their rituals, etc. How does one who is supposed to stand at the door of the house deserve to eat from the same dish as the master? Since Lord Krishna, right, he's just left. Remember, this is right after the Mahabharata war. Parīkṣit's still in the womb at the end of the war. And so now he's the king. So I don't know, what would that be, 20, 30 years or whatever that is. So since Lord Krishna, the punisher of the miscreants, has left the world, I myself will today punish the transgressor of the law. Just witness my power. So he's so arrogant, he's even comparing himself to Krishna, this boy. But he has power. So after uttering this to his companions, the sage's son, his eyes red with anger, touched the water of the Kaushiki river and released a verbal thunderbolt in the form of a curse. And this is another thing I've never had an explanation for. But whenever curses are uttered, there's always the touching of sacred water. And I've never had an explanation for that, the relationship. And I know yogis can somehow travel or instantaneously, and there may be various ways they do that, but one is through water as well. So it's something about some property of water that I hope one day to run into some kind of a rational or some kind of a coherent explanation of the relationship with touching water and cursing and other properties that water has that are related with cities. So I'm keeping my eye, I'm sure there's something out there. I just haven't run into it yet. Okay, so he touches the water. He's got his Brahmin thread, right? So you wrap the Brahmin thread around your thumb, and then you hold your thing like that, touch water, and then you utter if you're doing your Gayatri mantra, you see the Brahmins in India, they take the sacred thread, it goes over the left shoulder, they take it, they wrap it 3 times around the thumb, and then they touch the thumb to the index, the ring finger like this, and then they'll chant their Gayatri mantra. So if you're uttering a curse, you also do that. So there we are. So, unleashed by me, the snake bird Takshaka, so he releases a flying snake, will bite that destroyer of his family's reputation. That's Parīkṣit. He's saying, he's destroyed his family reputation by offending my father. He has transgressed the limits of the law, dharma, and insulted my beloved father. Having done this, the boy returned to the ashrama and saw his father with the corpse of the snake on his shoulder. Overwhelmed with pain, he cried aloud. The father, who was a real yogi in this 4th state. Now, there's something about a child's cry, that even though he was in that 4th state, right? So he didn't hear Parīkṣit when he came in, and Parīkṣit asked him for water. But there's something about, the child's cry that I'm sure, parents can understand that sort of penetrate into, it can cut through everything. The mother can hear it, the father can hear it. So even though he was in the state of nirbija samadhi, when the son cried, that was, even though he hadn't heard Parīkṣit, but the son somehow or other, that some scars in his mind of paternal affection would have been so strong, he was a father after all, that cry triggered those strongly enough to pull him out, pull his consciousness out of svarupe vasthanam, and pull his consciousness back into a state of external awareness. So that's how I would explain that. So that's how we think of it. So he heard the cry of his son. Slowly opening his eyes, he saw the dead snake on his shoulder. He threw aside the snake. He's not offended. What's he care? It's Prakriti. This is the piece of Prakriti. He's not thinking purity, caste, offense. He just threw it aside and inquired, not angry, nothing. My son, why do you wail? Who has wronged you? Addressed in this way, the son informed him about what had happened. Right, he's all proud. When he heard their account, the father did not approve of his son's curse upon the king. He would not deserve such a thing. Right, he just had a rajasic moment. He was thirsty. Okay, so he made a mistake. It was clearly an act of adharma. No one's questioning that Parīkṣit did. But he didn't deserve to be cursed to die in 7 days. That's the curse. Does it say it here? Oh, he doesn't say it here. But the snake bird's going to bite him in 7 days. We'll find that in a minute. Aho, aho. That's a Vedic exclamation. Aho, aho. You have done a grave thing today. You've inflicted enormous punishment for a minor offense. Oh, it's a minor offense, and yogis never take offense anyway. You should never equate the king with ordinary men, you foolish boy. He's declared in okay, this is the king, sort of stands above dharma. Okay, we're probably not too happy about that idea in a democratic system, but here it is. The king, Lord of men, equal to Vishnu, but the thing is, if the king does not, okay, you have to understand this. You have to think of what would it be like for us if democracy broke down, if there was a nuclear war and all our civic structures broke down. That's the fear we might have of a scenario like that is the fear, exactly the same fear anywhere in the world, actually, not just ancient India. It was monarchy was, we still have it in England. But in a sort of, in a cultural sort of way. But that would be there would be no law and order. So then what would happen? If he doesn't oversee the kingdom, O son, then in an instant the world, unprotected and filled with thieves, becomes destroyed like a herd of sheep. There's no law and order. People, many of whom are thieves, will curse, kill, and rob cattle, women, and wealth from each other. The only thing that's stopping them doing that is the law. Do you remember in England when they had those, when they had the fires, and there was riots, and it was just civic, there was civic chaos for like a whole night. There was just pillaging and this is London. Just, 7 or 8 years ago. It was completely out of control. There were several hours when the police could not control the situation, and it was just looting and pillaging. So this is what he's talking about. So people people have that disposition. There are dishonest people, and some are dishonest, but others are afraid to be dishonest simply because they're afraid of jail. So that there are people who have that tamasic nature. I mean, I'm sure we all know some. And not only that, we will today incur the sin committed by the plunderers of wealth in those places where the king has been destroyed, even though that sin was not directly performed by us. In other words, if we killed the king, so then there's going to be this chaos. We'll get that karma, even if we're not participating in the chaos and the pillaging and the looting. The fact that we killed the king, we'll get the karma. So that's what he's saying. All right. So I don't know how much of this we need to do. This is the kind of dharma. This is all from dharma shastras. Obviously, yogis in the West are not studying this. We're studying, Vedanta and Gita, but just to get a sense of it, just to get a sense of the Vedic world, not so different from any other culture. Monarchy, which would have been everywhere in the world prior to, 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Without a king, the righteous codes of the Aryas, this is the Dharma Sutras, the injunctions of the Varnas, and castes and ashramas outlined in the 3 Vedas will vanish from society. All right, okay, let's skip all of that. So let's go down to 47. So it gives a little sort of a little speech about Dharma, and that the king is essential to the upkeeping of the kingdom. And then finally, he expresses his devotional core. Bhagavan, the soul of all, should please forgive the sin performed by this young, immature boy against his sinless servant, the king. So now he doesn't know what to do. The curse has been uttered. You can't take a curse back, by the way. Once it's uttered, sometimes you can tinker with it, modify it, but you can't take it back. So now he chastises his son. He just desperately, realizes the consequences of this, expresses them, and now there's nothing he can do. So he's just Ishvara Pranidhana. He just surrenders to Bhagavan. There's nothing. The situation is out of his control. So Bhagavan, the soul of all, should please forgive the sin performed by what else can you say? It's his son, and okay, he's a fool. He's a arrogant punk, but Brahmana punk. But the father's still a father. And then the Lord's devotees, meaning the father now, even though certainly capable of doing so, do not retaliate when abused, insulted, cursed, dishonored, or even when struck. So he could have cursed the king himself. He's far more powerful than he has all the cities that Patanjali talks about. No interest in them. Remember what Patanjali says? These cities are not of interest to the real yogis. Only those whose minds are vyuttana, the outwardly flowing. He doesn't even occur to him that he has cities that it wouldn't even occur to him. So he is then a real bhakta, or a yogi, but the bhakta yogi. So in this way, even though he had been disrespected by the king, the great sage did not consider this to be offense, but rather was distressed by the offense made by his son. He's angry at his son, not at Parīkṣit. Generally, saintly persons, when made to encounter the dualities of the world, right? In this case, honor, dishonor, but any duality, happiness, distress, right? Big theme in the Gita, what we know, right? Sukha dukkha, shitoshna, sukha dukkha da, agama payino nityas, tam titikshasva bharata. Happiness and distress like winter and summer, they come and they go, just tolerate them. Bharata, right? We got winter coming along, just tolerate. What else are you going to do? Cry, whine? So they're neither disturbed nor related by the actions of others. Why? This is because they have realized the Atman situated beyond the gunas. If we're absorbed in the gunas, then we're always interpreting the gunas as happy, sad, good, bad, like it, don't like it. That's the fate of those of us who are trapped in avidya and asmita. We're subject to raga dvesha, which simply then manifests as sukha dukkha, happy, sad. So these are the dualities that the texts keep talking about, the dvandvas. But the saintly persons, they're not disturbed or related, so they're not dukkha or sukha, because they've realized the Atman. Now, next chapter. So Sutta is recounting this to the sages of the forests of Naimisharanya, another lovely holy place in Uttar Pradesh in north central India. I went there once, quite isolated, quite lovely. Meanwhile, so the king has gone off, right? This is going on. So the great king, now he's settled down a bit, thinking about the offense that he had done. Now it's sinking in. Was extremely troubled in mind. Oh, I performed a despicable deed, as if I were a non-Aryan. Remember what an Aryan is? A follower of Vedic culture. It was appropriated by German ideology for reasons connected to Sanskrit as the oldest Indo-European language, which was then connected to an Indo-European race, which was connected to nationalism. And I did a whole PhD dissertation on it, and I'm really utterly fed up with it. So I'll spare you, but I do happen to know that whole story rather well. Okay. So meanwhile, So he says, oh, I performed a despicable deed as if I were a non-Aryan, as if I was not, I know Vedic culture, I'm the king. And I acted as if I didn't know anything about Dharma against an innocent Brahmin. And now he realizes he wasn't feigning, whose yogic power is retained, concealed. Therefore, it is certain that a terrible calamity will soon befall me because of the offense I've performed against this divine being. Now, normally, when you're going to get cursed, die in 7 days, you'd be freaking out, but not Parīkṣit. No, not a yogi. He's actually embraces it. Let this freely occur to absolve me of sin so that I never commit such acts again. So he wants to get hit by karma. So that will just slap him out of that, that he'll never fall into that way of thinking again. He wants his karma. He's embracing his karma. He wants the lessons that karma brings. That's one reason. But later on, we'll see another reason why he embraces it. Since I am so wretched, let the fire of the Brahmanas rage, the boy, even today. Let it consume my kingdom, my strength, my wealth, treasury, such that I never again harbored a sinful attitude towards the twice-born Brahmanas, gods, or cows, right? So the Brahmanas are born from the mother, and then they're born into one of the samskaras, which doesn't mean that there are two kinds of, the samskara means the mental imprints, but it also means a rite of passage. So there are 12 samskaras that the Brahmins go through, like marriage is one of them, and death rites, and first grain, and birth. So there's 12 of them, and one is taking the sacred thread. So that's the end. At that point, the Brahmin becomes twice born. Okay, so he's not at all upset about being cursed. He's upset about the offense that he's made. Probably he's had a drink of water at this time. As he was thinking in this manner, the king heard about his impending doom looming in the form of the snake bird Takshaka. Right, so the Takshaka is going to bite him in 7 days. So he hears about that. Invoked by the son of the sage. He considered this to be fitting. And here's why. Now, the first reason is, okay, it's going to burn up my karma and I'll get taught a lesson. But here's a higher reason. He was attached to worldly life, and the fire of Takshaka would soon be the means of his detachment. This is the yogic way of thinking. He's a king. I mean, even though he's a great bhakta and everything, but he has the most, he has a kingdom and immense treasuries and inconceivable opulences. You're going to get a bit attached. But because he's a yogi in his heart, he's always kind of wanted to be detached, but he couldn't because Dharma required him to rule the kingdom and protect the citizens. But deep down, he hankered to be free of all of that, and just go to some hermitage where he could simply fix his mind on his beloved Krishna. So so he embraces this, thank God. He was attached to worldly life, and the fire of Takshaka would soon be the means of his detachment. Parīkṣit gave up any desire for this world and the celestial one. Remember, celestial one is not liberation. It's just a higher kind of realm you temporarily go to if you have good karma. So he had anyway long determined that they should be renounced, considering service to the lotus feet of Krishna to be superior. Don't some of you feel that way? You get to a place in life, and even if you have opulence, it's all just a burden. It's just a burden, and you start hankering for the time when you're free of your responsibilities to your family or whatever it might be, and then you can simply engage in practice, my friends. Does anybody, when you get some white hairs, then we'll check back. Okay, happy check. We'll give you 20 years. You can doing your MA there. You still got your ambitions going on. You still got your goals. 20 years, all right? B will give you 30, and then we'll check in on you. Okay, I'm definitely at that point, my friend. So anyway, here we are. So he then sat down to fast to death on the bank of the Ganga River. He doesn't want any distractions. He's got 7 days. And he's not going to play the silly game. Okay, I'll do it later. I'll renounce later when I'm old, right? The silly game the mind plays, doesn't it? Oh, later. But of course, later never comes. So he's got 7 days. He can't play that game. So he doesn't want any distraction, doesn't sleep and doesn't eat. Right. So he sits on the Ganga. This is the verse glorifying the Ganga. We don't need to worry about that. 7. Having made this resolve to sit on the banks of the Ganga to fast until death, Parīkṣit, descendant of the Pandavas, okay, so he's the son of Arjuna, which means he's the nephew of the other four Pandavas. They're his uncles, and Arjuna is his father, and Krishna is the paternal. Kunti and Vasudeva are brother and sister. So Krishna's father and the Pandava's mother are siblings. So he's cousins. So having made this resolve to sit on the banks of the Ganga, to fast until death, Parīkṣit, descendant of the Pandavas, firm in the vows of a sage. So now he's going to be brahmachari, everything. Now he's stopped the path of action path, and now he's going to follow the path of Patanjali. Complete renunciation. So now the vows are different. Now he has to follow the yama and niyamas and those kinds of vows, which are the vows for the path of inaction. And free from all attachments, concentrated on the feet of Mukunda with undivided attention. This is bhakti meditation. Patanjali has a little bit of it. Om, right? Om is Ishvara. Okay, Ishvara is Bhagavan. He comes as Om, but it's not very personal. The personal aspect of Ishvara is not present, is barely present in Patanjali. In these bhakti texts, that personal, the qualities, the form, the wonderful activities are what the bhakta fixes the mind on, as we will see. So now he's going to fast to death. Well, this is a big event. He's the emperor of the world. This is a huge thing. This is a happening, my friend. So all the great sages arrive when they hear Parīkṣit's going to fast to death, right? So this is a big thing. If you're a sage, you go to the Kumbh Melas. What do you do as a sage? You're meditating all day, but if you want to, what's a happening for a sage? Well, there's the Kumbh Melas, every 4 years, every 12 years, every 144 years, depending on, the astronomy. But this is a happening. So at this, the great realized sages, right? They realize, Atman realize, who can purify the worlds, right? They're not just going to go sightseeing. If they're going somewhere, it's because it's going to be an amazing event that's going to be connected with their spiritual practices. They're not just going to go and see the Taj Mahal or something like, or something like that. So they arrive there with their disciples, all these dreadlocks and sacred clay and their various dandas and sticks and begging bowls. So they all have their different, attires and belong to different lineages with their different markings. The saints, under the pretext of performing pilgrimage, actually themselves purify a pilgrimage place. So the Bhagavatam likes to say that. It says it quite a few places, that people go to the pilgrimage place and they think it's holy because, this is where Rama was born, that's where Krishna was born, and there's truth to that. But the text says actually, really, the holy places are holy because the saints go there. The saints go there because they're holy places, but the saints go there to purify them, to give everybody, the real saints, the real enlightened ones, and there may be 1 out of 100 sadhus. I don't know what the numbers would be. No one can know that. But they go to the holy places because pilgrims go there and seekers go there, and the real enlightened ones, rather than sit in a cave and just meditate on their Atman, they're benevolent beings, and they give everyone a chance to encounter, to start their own spiritual journey. That start has to come from the outside. Instruction has to come from the outside. Spiritual knowledge has to come from the outside into the mind, just like anything else. I know I've said this so many times. If Ben and Jerry has a new flavor of ice cream, let's use a mundane example. That knowledge of that new flavor, how does it enter the mind? Somebody tells you, or you see it on the shelf, or you see it on the telly. It doesn't magically manifest in the mind. It has to come in from one of the senses. So that's knowledge of Ben and Jerry's new flavor ice cream. Well, spiritual knowledge is the same. It doesn't magically pop into the mind. It has to come in. So therefore it has to come in through the instructions of the great sages, either in the form of the books. All right, so the great sages, then they want to help people. So they go to the holy places because they know the holy places, simple, pious villages, nice, seekers and pious people will go there to take bath in the Ganga, to get some punya, to get some good karma, to purify themselves. And many of them are just go there for pious reasons, but some go there genuinely seeking real truth. So the sages make themselves available. So they sit in their ashrams, in their ashrams and in their little places in the banks of the Ganga. So my teacher was like that. You sit, and then anybody who come, he would talk to them. Everybody had the chance. He gave everybody the mantra. They had a chance. So this is the mood of the saint. So that's what it's saying. The saints, under the pretext of performing pilgrimage, they don't need to perform pilgrimage. They've already realized they're Atman. What are they doing? Wandering around holy places. Those people do that if they're not pure and they seek purity. So going to a holy place and pilgrimage is purifying. It's a practice. It's a sadhana. It's like mantras or kirtan or any of those sorts of things. But the saints who they go there under the pretext of performing pilgrimage, but actually themselves purify a pilgrimage place. They're purifying it, and elsewhere we will see they give everyone a chance to encounter ultimate knowledge. And then we get a list of the sages. Guess what? Patanjali's probably here. Let's have a look. Atri, Vashishta, Chavana, Sharadvan, Arishnamena, No, he's not. Gautama's there. Maitreya from the Upanishads. Of course, tradition. Dvaipayana, that's Vyas. And Narad. We had Narad. There's the great Narad. We had him last week. Okay, so this is all the well-known sages of ancient India. And other great sages and eminent brahmanas arrived also, as well as prominent kings like Aruna. All they come. There's the king, fasting to death. The king honored the eminent sages from various lineage, right? The sampradayas. So even today, you can tell the lineage from the sacred clay. So these are the Advaita traditions. There are 3 lines across the head like this. Actually, 12 markings of the body. You probably can't see the other ones because they're underneath the, well, you can if they just wear they're just wearing a light cloth. But these are Advaita vertical lines, and these are Vaishnava upward lines, and then the Shaivas have theirs, and the Shaktas have theirs. So you can, just looking at somebody, what their lineage is, as you would in Christian. You look at the robes of a Franciscan would be different from the robes of a Trappist, or black and white versus brown with a cord. So you just can look at someone, and you have these, just as you have Christian orders. So you have these lineages, they called sampradayas, paramparas. Okay. So there they all come, all the sages, and what does it say? From various lineage. And they paid obeisance by bowing his head. The king paid obeisance to them all, even though he's, emperor of the world and grandson of Arjuna. He offers his obeisances to the yogis. When they were seated comfortably and he had once again offered homage to them, the king stood before them with hands folded in supplication, right? Pranjalir, Anatosmi. So that's Pranjalir, right? That's hands, like this. In classical Indian symbol, gesture of respect. His mind completely detached from worldly affairs, and he informed them of his intentions. Let's skip the first. Okay, no, we won't. Aho! The dynasty of kings is actually contemptible, because we have to engage in violence and himsa and all of this, and deserves to be discarded far from the place where the water used for washing the feet of the brahmanas is found. So touching the feet is humility. And then, but he's saying, even where you wash the feet and then you take the water and throw it away in some place, we're so contemptible. We shouldn't even go near the place where the dirty foot, the water from washing the feet of the Brahmins is discarded. That's how lowly we are. But nonetheless, because of this, we kings are actually the most fortunate among men, since this character of ours makes us eligible for the compassion of magnanimous souls. In other words, we're so lowly, but that makes us eligible for mercy. The sages give compassion to the misfortunate and the lowly, provided one is humble. That's the only characteristic, my friends. That's the only quality. Humility and sincerity. If we have that, any genuine yogi, a genuine bhakta will always accept, always So only the Brahmins who are identified with body mind that have all this. So, oh, I'm a Brahmin and don't come near me and don't touch me. And you know, even if your shadow touches me, oh, now I'm polluted, I have to go. That's all caste Brahmanism. Genuine yogi, full of compassion. And all we need, my friends, all we need to approach whether a living guru or the texts, the Svadhyaya, because these are our gurus, we need humility and sincerity. No other qualification. Don't need to know Sanskrit, don't need to be born in any particular family, nothing. Humility, sincerity. So he's got that. So I am a sinful member of the my mind is always attached to household affairs. The Supreme Lord of all has manifested in the form of a Brahmana's curse. He sees this as Krishna's, as Bhagavan's kindness on him, that he's come in the form of death in the curse. And by that curse, in this manner, has thereby become the trigger for my detachment from worldly affairs. This is helping me. Bhagavan is helping me to become detached by manifesting, by sort of arranging this whole scenario where I've been cursed. This is the kindness of Bhagavan, because it's forcing me to become detached. And if I didn't become detached, then what? I die and I'm attached. Then when I come back, then I just cycle round and round and round in some material body, suffering, feeling unfulfilled, lost in samsara. So this is the kindness. This is how the yogi thinks. But he knows, because of such a curse, people who are attached to worldly affairs, not yogis, but those who are attached to worldly affairs would normally be immediately thrown into a state of fear. If you're not a yogi and you know you're going to die in 7 days, you're going to be terrified. So, right. May the sages of Mother Ganga accept me as someone who has turned to the Lord. This is Ishvara Pranidhana. I'm now completely surrendered. I'm in the hands of God, whose mind is fixed on him. Let this snake bird, taksha, or whatever magical thing was discharged by the Brahmin, let it bite me as is fitting. And he goes on. And now he thinks, when I get born again, may fellowship with those who have taken shelter of the unlimited Lord, as well as affection for them, be bestowed upon me in whatever be the next birth I may obtain in this material world. This is how a bhakta thinks. You never think you're going to get liberated, because that would be, then you think that you're such a good bhakta, that you're so pure and you're so elevated, you're going to get liberated. No bhakta thinks like that. Bhakta thinks, whatever birth I'm obviously, I'm destined to take, my only request is, may I have the company of bhaktas, so that we can inspire each other on the journey, we can enlighten each other, we can talk about our beloved Bhagavan, and we can be, this is Sangha, this is fellowship. That's the only request. Whatever my birth may be, give me the company of bhaktas. This is a devotional request that is appropriate for the thinking of a humble bhakta. So, and may I be a friend to all in my next birth. Allow me to just serve everybody and love everybody. What a beautiful way of thinking. The king, who had handed over responsibility to his son, right, which is the sort of normal way of things, was determined and resolved in mind. Okay, determined. On the southern side of the Ganga, auspicious, facing north, he sat on the kusha grass that I was telling you about, the elephant grass, with its roots facing east. This all goes back to the old Vedic sacrifice. All this is a sort of auspicious arrangement of paraphernalia. Obviously nothing to do with yoga, but nonetheless, he's just following a sort of cultural protocol. When the king was seated on that seat and awaiting death in this manner, the host of celestial beings in the heavens joyfully praised him, showered flowers on the earth, and played kettle drums continuously. So the celestials, right? It's Parīkṣit. So even the celestials now, not only all the sages of the kingdom are there, but the celestials are now witnessing this amazing event of the next 7 days. Remember, this is how the Bhagavatam gets spoken. We're still, like the tale of Vyas, we know why he wrote it, because he was existentially unfulfilled. He had that malaise, but now it's going to be transmitted. So he composes it, and now this is how it gets transmitted and eventually and percolates through across the ages. And here we are, millennia later, or many centuries later, depending on how you want to date it all. Here we are reading these same teachings, and certainly me, and hopefully some of us, we must be getting inspired by them. So the sages who assembled there also praised him with joyful hearts. Well done. By the Sanskrit for that is sadhu, sadhu. Well done, well done. The nature of the real sages is to bestow blessings on living beings. And so they spoke to him about the pleasing qualities of Lord Vishnu, whose glories are supreme. So they recounted some of the, different deeds and incarnations and wonderful qualities and characteristics of Bhagavan. And so we go on a bit. Oh, best of sage kings, from among those who are devoted to Krishna, the Krishna Bhaktas, there's nothing surprising about the fact that the ones who desire to become, look at this, personal associates of Bhagavan. Bhaktas do not want to merge into Brahman. They do not want to, we stressed this point last class. We're going to stress it for all 7 sessions together because the Bhagavatam repeatedly stresses it. They don't want Sarupa Avastanam. They want an eternal relationship, personal associates of Bhagavan in the eternal kingdom of God, which is in Brahman. It's made of pure Brahman consciousness, but it's full of forms and qualities and variegatedness, infinite. If you want impersonal liberation of just absorption in your own essence, you can have that. If you want personal relationship with Bhagavan, you can have that. There are options. It's not the same thing. So what are the devotees of Krishna want? They want to become personal associates of Bhagavan. They don't want Brahmajyoti. They don't want Swarupe Vastanam of Patanjali, 3rd verse. So it's hardly surprising that they renounce the royal throne. Anyway, let's get on with the teaching. So now we will all remain here, these are the sages, until this foremost of Bhagavan's devotees relinquishes his material body and departs to the supreme realm Vaikuntha. Okay, this is a realm within Brahman. This world is like Plato's forms, the cave. This world is a reflection of that world. This world has forms and qualities and trees and personalities and wonderful variegatedness, infinite variegatedness. Everything is one blade of grass different from the other. Well, why do we think it's all lacking in the Supreme? No, it's all there, but it's made of pure consciousness. Pure realm, the realms of pure, with Bhagavan has infinite forms of Bhagavan. So all of the bhaktas can have their own, you can have your own personal relationship with Bhagavan. It's not that there's one Bhagavan and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of Atmans all waiting their turn. No. When Krishna dances with the gopis, each gopi has her own Krishna. That's when you see in the Gujarati, or if you go to the Indian restaurant, you see the picture on the wall, Krishna and the gopi, Krishna and the gopi. Pay attention next time. That's it. There's profound theology in that. That's communicating to you. You have your own personal relationship with Bhagavan. This is personalist liberation. Personalist, not impersonal. Impersonalistic, Advaita Vedanta, Patanjali, Sankhya are the paths. Will give you an impersonal realization where there's no individuality, no God, no world, no nothing, an infinite, eternal experience of pure blissful consciousness, Satchidananda. That's available too. Take your pick, my friends. But first of all, make it an informed pick. So let's get more information before we decide where we're going to invest our spiritual energies, our spiritual commitments. Okay. So the assembled sages were fixed in yoga. Their words were impartial, full of sweetness, profound and true. They're gentle beings, full of sweetness. We have to learn to be like this. I'm too harsh. I feel I'm too harsh. Anyway, impartial. They see all beings equally. Profound, right? They don't chit-chat about, sports. Baiting football. No. They're profound and true. After listening to them, Parīkṣit, desiring to hear about the deeds of Vishnu, he wants to know about Vishnu, about God, offered the sages his respects and addressed them. Okay, now we're going to get to some teachings. You've all assembled here from all the corners of the world. Skip, next verse. Therefore, with full faith in you, O learned ones, I submit to you this most worthy query. Okay, he's going to ask 8 questions, 1 now, and I think 7. We'll count them. I think it's 8. In a few verses. Okay, And the whole of the Bhagavata Purana is a response to these 8 questions. So if you want to highlight them, the first one is coming up. Can you just give me a minute? My throat is getting dry, and I'm just going to run to the and get something to drink. I'll be right back. So if anybody wants a bathroom break, now's a good moment. Benevolent beings, and the only reason we circulate in the world is to bestow grace on others, serve others. Why can't we develop that kind of thinking? What's stopping us, other than the desires, the nonsense, and ignorance? So therefore, says Parīkṣit, with full faith in you, O learned ones, here's his question. I submit to you this most worthy query. From all those duties that are to be performed by everyone, right? So many duties, so many dharmas. You have parent dharma, you have child dharma, you have civic dharma, you have all kinds of dharmas. So all of those dharmas that call our attention at every moment in life, from all those dharmas that are to be performed by everyone, what is the ultimate dharma that should be performed specifically by those about to die? All those other dharmas are useless when you're going to die. What's the point? You can't be. You're not a parent anymore. You're going to die. You're not a son. You're not a child. You're not going to work in society. And all those dharmas now are completely and utterly useless. So, what is the dharma for a person at the moment of death? The ultimate dharma. What a question! What a way of framing it. He's framing it that way because he's a warrior, a kshatriya. So, whereas a yogi, like Vedantins think, and they use Vedanta type of language, and yogis use a kind of yogi kind of language. Well, warriors use the language of Dharma. They probably sit and listen to the, maybe the Brahmins come to the palace and give some discussion on the Upanishads, but probably the Brahmins falling asleep in the back of the room there. So they're reared in the language of Dharma, 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 Dharma. Their sources of information are the Dharma Sutras and the great epics. The Mahabharata is actually a Dharma Shastra. The entire 100,000 verse epic Mahabharata is a Dharma Shastra. It's all about Dharma and conflicts of Dharma and compromises of Dharma and upholding. So he's thinking those are the samskaras in his head. So even when he's thinking about yoga and death and ultimate stuff, he comes out in the language of Dharma because that's the vocabulary he has at his disposal. So it's an unusual way of framing it. What is the dharma of someone at the moment of death? Gita wouldn't frame it like that. Yoga Sutra wouldn't frame it like that. And Moksha Shastras wouldn't frame it like that, but he's framing it like that. And I think it's helpful. Sometimes expressing things in different ways gives us new insights. What is the dharma, optimum dharma, that should be performed specifically by those about to die? Please give this your full consideration. So he puts that to the sages. At that moment, by chance, the son of Vyas, the great Vyas that we encountered last session, the great sage Shuka, happened to arrive there. He was wandering around the earth in the guise of an ascetic renunciate. Remember what we just said about the real enlightened beings? They pretend to go to pilgrimage places. Of course, they don't need to be purified. They already attained the goal. So why do they go there? To give everyone a chance to encounter truth, Bhagavan and the Atman, depending on what their lineage is. So he's in the guise of an ascetic renunciate, completely unattached to anything, as he was satisfied by the realization of his Atman, the inner self. Surrounded by young boys, his elevated characteristics lay concealed. His Brahma Tejas. He was 16 years of age, with handsome and youthful feet, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders. His face had beautiful white eyes, a stately. He was gorgeous. And there's a reason why this isn't relevant to the story. You could say, what's this got to do with a yogi? Why is he describing his beauty? He had a stately nose, symmetrical ears, attractive eyebrows. His collarbones were concealed. That's a sign of beauty. He had a broad, attractive chest, navel. Okay, so these are all the signs of beauty according to the Indian poetic tradition. So you have different that changes from time to time. Go to the Met and look at the paintings from the 16th century, 17th century, the women there, they have a certain, they're depicted in a certain way that reflected notions of beauty at that time. So here's the notions of beauty in the Puranic tradition. He was captivating to women because of his charming smile. And the story is actually not given here, but the reason why it's described like this, I think I've shared this with you before. But here's the story. Why all this attention being paid to his gorgeousness and all of these kind of classical symptoms, signs of beauty, like broad chest and lotus eyes. Well, the story is, one day he just leaves home because he has no sense of home. He's realized it's Atman. So at that point, what's home mean? What does that mean? If you're absorbed in the Atman, what is a home? So he wonders, and his father, the great Vyas, even though he's also enlightened, but maybe just for the purpose of illustrating the story, he's running after his son. Suka, come back. He still has some attachment. But Śukadeva wonders, he's wandering, got nowhere to go, nothing to do. And he walks past the river. And just like we have, ladies' room and men's rooms, there's even today in a village India, there'll be a portion of the river where only the girls go, and you just don't go, right? Just the same way as a bloke doesn't go to the ladies' room. It's just convention. So you don't go. And he doesn't know this. What does he know? So he just wanders by, and there's these beautiful 16-year-old, gorgeous young females naked in the river. And that's why he's described as being gorgeous. So he just looks at them, and they look at him, and they keep bathing, and he just sort of keeps, and he keeps going. And then Vyas, his father, comes, and he's an old gnarly sage, dreadlocks, red eyes. He's described as having red eyes from all the tapas in the Mahabharata. He's got red eyes from all the tapas that he's doing, and he's running after old man, right? And immediately the young girls scuttle out of the river and grab their garments and cover themselves. And so the Vyas sees all of this, and he says, "Well, don't you? I'm old enough to be your great grandfather. How come Shuka walked by, gorgeous young man, and you didn't do anything? And here I am, an old sage, a compiler of all the Vedas. Remember, we read the story, and all the Puranas, and I'm great Vyas, and you immediately scuttle out, cover yourself. Well, why didn't you do that for my son?" And they said, because he did not see us as gendered beings. He saw the Atman. He just looked at us. There was no gender. There was no sense of body identification, of, sex, of gender, or anything like that. And he saw us as Atman. So we had no need to act as females. But you saw us as females, so we responded as females. It's a beautiful story, actually. You saw us as females, and so we responded as females, but your son didn't. So he had no need. There was no sexual vibe or any of that stuff. So therefore, that's why he's described. He was dark complexioned, displayed an attractive, youthful appearance. He was captivating to women, blah, blah, blah. All those sages could recognize his saintly characteristics, even though his lust was covered up. So they rose from their seats. So, okay, so then, we're running. We've only got 45 minutes. So he gets greeted by the king, and he does his namaha, and then he glorifies him, and and the king says as usual, humbles himself as a kshatriya by simply remembering such persons as yourself. Our houses become purified just by thinking of you. We become pure. So he offers these nice, genuine words of welcome and respect. Right. So now once all that is done, they settle down, and he says, therefore, now he's going to ask more questions. I ask of you, Shuka, the young boy, all the sages recognize he should answer the question of the king. So in this great assembly, who's going to respond to the king? And when they saw Shuka, everybody immediately, from his characteristics, said it should be him. They just looked at him and they immediately recognized his greatness, his Brahma Tejas, his great devotional qualifications. I ask of you, now now we get seven more questions. What is the means to perfection? What should be done at every moment by a person in this world about to die, my friends? He's blessed. He knows he has 7 days, but all of us, we're about to die. So what should we do at every moment? What should be heard? What mantra should be chanted? Japyam. What action should be performed by men, O Master? What should be remembered? What should we keep in our minds as we're acting in this world? As we get up in the morning and we do our duties and we go to the bathroom and we prepare our breakfast and we do our pujas and we do our work. What should we be remembering? Like, over and above the little nitty-gritty details of day-to-day, the minutiae of day-to-day functioning. What should be really? What should the mind be actually, sort of like background music? What should be the mind really focusing on? What should be worshipped? And please tell me what should be avoided. O Brahman, it is known that your honor never lingers in the homes of those attached to their households for more than even the brief time taken to milk a cow. Another convention, the sadhus go and they beg, just like they go to pilgrimage places, but they don't need to. Just like they dress as ascetics, they don't need to, but they're signaling, like a policeman that signals, okay, you need help, I'm the policeman. So the real yogis, they don't need to wear saffron. They don't need to have these signs of renunciation. They retain the Atman. But they do that to signal to people, I'm a sadhu. If approach me, I'm inviting you by wearing this paraphernalia, by my signia. I'm inviting you to take the opportunity to inquire, like we're reading in our Rutgers class. First sutra of the Vedanta Sutra, very first, Atato Brahma Jignasu. Now the inquiry into Brahman. So they're signaling that. So therefore, they knock on the door and they beg some milk. They don't need the milk, but they give the householder an opportunity. Some just give milk just as a cultural thing, just because they don't want bad karma, and okay, off you go. Others don't give any, and others see the sadhu, invite the sadhu into the house and ask questions. So the real sadhu makes herself, nowadays, no reason why the ladies can't do that. Of course, in the ancient time, it would have been, as everywhere else in the world, men, right? So, but if the opportunity isn't taken, the sadhu doesn't linger. So that's what it means. Your honor never lingers in the homes of those attached to their households for more than even the brief time taken to milk a cow. You get your chance. Can I have you knock on the door, beg some milk, go and get the milk, all that time. And if you don't ask a question, if you don't invite the sadhu in and say, Maharaj, please, tell us something about Atman, tell us something about, Bhagavan, please, then of course the sadhu will come and stay and sit down. But if not, then off he goes. This is the mind of the great being. Addressed and questioned, but the king was not like that. He addressed and questioned in this way with these sincere words. We have to approach the sadhus with sincere questions. My friends, if you have a chance to take the association of a great being, those words enter the heart and that's it. You finish. Your material life is finished. You might flap around a bit, yeah, your little desires kind of still lingering about for a little bit, but you're finished. Your material life is finished. Take it from me, my friends, it's finished. You have no more. You have absolutely no more, hope that you'll find happiness in the material. Destroyed by the words of the sadhu. You have no more. Your illusions are shattered. There's no happiness in the material world. You know what you have to do. You might flap about a bit and try to resist it, but your material life is finished to all intents and purposes. So addressed in question in this way with those sincere words, the great Shuka, son of Badarayana, and knower of Dharma, right? Remember, he's the king, so we're getting a lot of Dharma talk, responded to the king. Okay. Shuka said, this question of yours, posed for the welfare of people, is excellent, O king. It is appreciated by those who know the Atman, and here is a good, nice one. From everything that it is useful for people to hear, it's the most worthwhile topic. Everything else is useless, my friends, if it doesn't help us prepare for the moment of death. For those people who have not seen the truth of the Atman and attached to homes and households, there are thousands of things that seem worth hearing, right? Chattering about the news, chattering about this, chattering about, so there's thousands of things for those who have not connected to the Atman. It seems that they are that seem worth hearing. Notice it's the subjunctive. And now he says, for those who are not connected to the Atman, or interested in the spiritual path, the prime of life is carried away by sexual intercourse and sleep during the night, O king, and striving for wealth and maintaining one's family during the day. Obsessed with body, children, wife, which are like illusory soldiers, subject to death at any moment. Or your kids go off to college, and that's it. You know, they text you once a month when they need some money. They're illusory soldiers. One does not perceive their demise, even while actually perceiving it. Even we see we're getting old, our kids are leaving us, we perceive it, but we don't perceive it. We cling to these, we desperately cling to our attachments. Therefore, O son of Bharata, Parīkṣit, one desiring freedom from fear should hear about, glorify, and remember Hari. So this is a bhakti kind of practice. It's not so much a nirodha practice. It's not so much stilling the mind, but filling the mind with only Hari. It's a different kind of practice. It's an active practice. It's a chitta-vritti practice, but it's a kevala Ishvara chitta-vritti, only Ishvara. He is Bhagavan, Ishvara, the Paramatman. Indeed, the perfection of life for a person, whether through the paths of Sankhya or Yoga, whether through the inaction path, or through performance of duty, the Karma Yoga path, or through the Jnana path, is to remember Narayan at the end of life. This is the goal. And we're not going to do that if we don't practice it during the life, my friends. There's nothing else to do. What else is there to do? There isn't anything else to do other than just keep doing things which don't really fulfill us. They don't fill our hearts. We're just killing time. Getting up in the morning, doing the same old thing, killing time and getting closer to death and wasting a human form of life. Because this is the goal, right? Whether in any of these ways, you could do it, you could do a Patanjalian type of remembering of Narayan. Excuse me. Usually, okay, sages who have desisted from, mundane dharma, rules, regulations, and are situated in the state beyond the gunas. Remember the fourth state, is another way of referring to it. But what do we have? We had Svarupa Vastanam is Patanjali's second sutra. Then he also calls it Nirbija. He also calls it Kevala. He also calls it Samprajnata. The Upanishads called it the fourth. And another common term that the Gita uses is gunartita, which is what is being used here. Gunartita, beyond the gunas. Because anything material, including mental states, emotions, all of that's gunas. So if something's beyond the gunas, then there's only one thing that's beyond the gunas, and that's Bhagavan and Purusha. So that's another way of referring to that ultimate state. So they've attained Brahman. Now he's framing it in Upanishadic language. This is Sankhya language, beyond the gunas, and Bhagavad Gita language. But those who have attained that relish the qualities and stories of Hari. That means the qualities and stories of Hari are nothing to do with the gunas. They are Brahman. They're not some gunic prop or method. They are Saguna Brahman, my friends. This Bhagavata Purana is none different from Brahman because it encapsulates Bhagavan. I learned it from my father, Vyas, at the end of the Dvapara Yuga, the third world age, which had just passed. Although I had attained perfection, he'd already seen his Atman, and was situated in the state beyond the gunas. Okay, there it is again, Gunatita. My mind was captured by the pastimes of Krishna. Hence, I studied this history. If you've attained the state beyond the gunas, you don't need to study anything. What are you going to study? What are you going to study? You're going to read Nietzsche or Kant? Well, ridiculous. There's nothing to study. You reach But Bhagavan is beyond the Atman. Remember in the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavan is beyond the Atman. So if you've attained your Atman, and then you learn about Bhagavan, or you become attracted to Bhagavan, Bhagavan's beyond the Atman. So therefore, you study the Bhagavatam. because now you have another project. You've already attained a great and wonderful goal of realizing your Atman, but you haven't realized the supreme Atman. And the Bhagavatam is for the Krishna traditions. Obviously, there are other Puranas for other forms of Ishvara. So he says, I will narrate that Purana to you. Okay? The chanting of the name of Hari has been prescribed for those yogis who are disinterested in material enjoyment and who desire freedom from fear. This is the process that is especially for the age of Kali. If you seek a meditative process, my friends, not just the Bhagavatam, all of these traditions, beginning with the Upanishads, with Om, Patanjali with Om, it is mantra. That is by far in the Vaidika traditions, that is the method, fixing the mind on the mantra, encountering Bhagavan in the sonic form, in the form of sound, sonic presence. That is by far the most stressed and presented and recommended process for our day and age. So if you're in the Iyengar tradition, then your mantra is Om Namo Narayanaya. That's the mantra of the Krishnamacharya, Guruji Iyengar tradition. That's the mantra. And then you fix the mind on that in your japa meditation. Try it. Try mantra meditations, my friend. Instead of just sitting there trying to still the mind or whatever, trying to be sattvic, encounter Bhagavan. You counter Bhagavan in the form of the name. It's not just you in your mind and try to, there's nothing wrong with that. Trying to muster up Maitre and that's all good stuff. But that's just sattva. That's sattva. Bhagavan's beyond all of that. So the way to encounter Bhagavan is mantra. And you relate to the mantra as Bhagavan. You relate to it as a personal being in the form of sound. Why not? Give it a go. What to lose? All this other stuff is great. All this other kind of friendliness. I mean, remember in Patanjali, these are just steps along the way. They're not goals. The what do they call them? The chatur. All right. So on we go. So the chanting of the name of Hari has been prescribed. All the texts have prescribed that from the Upanishads. Surely there's some, even if you're not sure about it, but just the fact that something, I can understand if something was just sort of one tradition and it was different from all the other traditions, and you'd be like, I don't know, well, this tradition says this and the other. But then mantra is recommended in every single yogic tradition. And you get to choose the form of Ishvara you wish to interact with through the name of that form. So you have freedom to choose your Ishtadevata. But the way you encounter that Ishtadevata, my friends, is through the mantra. But all the traditions say that, from the earliest. So if something has been around 3,000 years, that's by academic dating, and pervaded every single Shaiva, Vaishnava, Shakta, Upanishadic, Vaidika, all of it, Pancharatrika, all of them, and early Buddhism. Well, surely that's got that, just sheer weight of that weight of time and something that's been accepted by all of these incredible beings across the centuries that have given their lives to the quest much more intensely than you and I have. Surely all that counts for something. So they're all recommending mantra. Even though Patanjali says, all right, fix your mind on anything you want. You can he says, Ishvara, and then he gives a little list. Oh, you can fix your mind on the breath. Oh, okay, you fix it on your nose, smell at the end of your nose, some weird things. Then he goes, Yathabhi Matava. I can imagine they throw it up his hands. Yathabhi Matava, right? Because we can imagine someone sitting there going, Guruji, is it okay if I fix my mind on my big toe? And then Patanjali goes, Yathabhi Matava. I'll fix it on whatever you want. But clearly he's recommending mantra. It's the first on the list. He gives it like 6 or 7 verses. So, my friends, what do you have to lose? Except for ignorance and ego and repeated birth and death. What else do you have to lose? Taking up a mantra meditation. All right, so on they go. What is the use of many years squandered mindlessly by a deluded person, running around the world trying to find happiness? Let it be known that it is better for 1 hour to be spent striving for one's ultimate welfare. Better to spend 1 hour doing svadhyaya than a whole lifetime mindlessly running around chasing some silly illusion of some wealth or some relationship or something that you think is going to make you happy, which we won't. And then he gives examples. After the sage king Katvanga find out what remained of his life in this world, he renounced everything in an... Okay, let's skip. We don't have time. There is a limit also, Kaurava, to your lifespan, 7 days. Take all steps necessary to prepare for death during this time. When the end comes, a person should sever desire for this body and all that is associated with it, family, possessions, and the like, with the weapon of detachment free from fear. We have to break our attachments. If we don't break them, then we just simply come back. But when we come back, we're not going to be with the same family and with the same material objects that we left behind. So anyway, you're going to be separated from them. Detachment is non-negotiable. It's tapas. It's the first word in the 2nd chapter of Patanjali. It's vairagya, right there in the beginning. What is nirodha? It's abhyasa and vairagya. Vairagya is detachment. Okay, so here we have overlap with Patanjali. With mind fixed, one should leave home, wash in the waters of a sacred place, sit on a seat prepared according to the prescription. So this is the Patanjali and yoga. I don't want to spend time on this. One should concentrate on the 3 constituent phonies of Om, Aum, the great and pure Brahman in the form of sound. Here it is again. Here is the Om is more impersonal Brahman for those, especially for those seeking the Atman rather than personal relationship. They've opted to seek their own Atman. Then Om comes highly recommended from the Upanishads onwards. But those seeking a personal relationship with Bhagavan want a more personal mantra that reflects the personality of his qualities. So, you know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Narayanaya, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. These are the personless mantras. One should retain one's mind and control one's breathing, keeping one's mind fixed on that seed. This is why it's sabija samadhi, because when you're chanting Om, like any sound, it leaves a seed in the mind. Just like you listen to music and it leaves a seed, and you have a memory. So sabija samadhi, even though it's a samadhi, the mind is completely fixed, but it's not near bija yet. The mind is still aware of that object, the Om, and therefore that Om is leaving a seed on the mind. That's why it's sa bija. Bija is a samskara. Then, with the intelligence as driver, one should remove the senses from the sense objects by means of the mind, pratyahara. If one's mind becomes disturbed by agitation, so now this is kind of like dharana. The difference between dharana and dhyana and the 8 limbs of yoga is dharana, it's still a little bit distracted. So if that happens, one should focus it on the desired object, Lord Krishna, by means of the intelligence. The intelligence has to bring the mind back, bring it back to the mantra, bring it back to the meditation. Then one should meditate on one limb of the Lord with uninterrupted mind. So this is a different kind of meditation. Now it's very personal. You're meditating on the body of Vishnu. But it's the same ultimate goal. After controlling the mind and removing it from sense object, one should not think of anything else. The mind should take pleasure there alone, the supreme destination of Vishnu. Normally, one's mind is harassed by rajas and deluded by tamas. Okay, rajas agitates and tamas just deludes and covers and makes us just insane. Just see things the reverse of what they actually are, misinterpret. Rajas confuses. It's different. It agitates. A wise person should control the mind by dharana and destroy all the impurities created by the mind. With this concentration on Vishnu, okay, Patanjali gives it in the form of Om as Ishvara, Tasya Vachika Pranavaha. This is all the same thing, my friends. It's just this is giving you a much, much richer understanding of what Ishvara is. Patanjali is only 2,000 words. It's tiny. It's, you know, it's 200 sutras or 197 sutras, and it's just, you know, 2 pages. It's very tiny text. It just gives us 20 words. No, wait a minute, it's not 2,000 words. What am I talking about? There's 197 sutras, average length 1,200 words. 1,200 words in the sutras. That's like two pages, double spaced. This is really giving a much richer understanding of who is that Ishvara. While this concentration on the refuge, the pranidhana, the one that one absorbs, one, you know, one takes refuge of Vishnu with the mind. The Vishnu becomes the refuge of the mind. The mind is pranidhata in Vishnu. So while that's being practiced, this pranidhata is the past passive participle, pranidhana is the noun. While this concentration on the refuge of Lord Vishnu is being practiced, the symptoms of bhakti devotion appear in the yogi. The goosebumps, hair starts to arise on end. This is bhakti meditation. If you're seeking your Atman, you won't get that. You'll get ananda. You get different kinds of symptoms. Bhakti symptoms are different from, you know, the Svarupe Vastanam symptoms. Patanjali doesn't talk about those. They're very, but bhakti does. You can't help it. There's so much bliss in encountering God. It's much more than the bliss in the Atman. It's much more than the ananda in the Atman. There is ananda in the Atman. There's Satchid Ananda. No question about that. No one is questioning that. But Bhagavan is greater than the Atman. It's the Paramatman. So that bliss is greater. So then there are these physical symptoms. Body erupts into goosebumps and so forth. These are the symptoms of bhakti. Right. Look at what they're not very complimentary about the Vedic scriptures, by the way. But let's move on. A sage who is not deluded, whose intelligence is fixed on the self, should accept whatever things are necessary for accomplishing this purpose and no more. Accept what is necessary for realizing the Atman, nothing more. One should not struggle for anything other than this, realizing that doing so would simply be labor for nothing. Anything else that we labor for other than the Atman is labor for nothing. It all ends at death. Finished. At best, we made some good karma and we come back and our next birth is a little bit good. But it's kind of useless, isn't it? From the point of view of the Atman. Good karma is useless from the point of view of the Atman. It just means you come back, you know, you have a little bit more facility next time. Useless. So the only real thing, the only purpose for existence is to seek the Atman. Anything else is a waste of time. One should not struggle for anything more than this. Realize, we just read that. Okay. It is 6. It is the Atman that is the cherished goal. It is a part of the unlimited Bhagavan. All right. So this tradition, it's, you know, we're sparks of God, but we're not God. We can never be God. This is not monist. This is not Advaita. This is more like Ramanuja's Vishishta Advaita. The soul is a spark of God, a part of God, but not God. And union does not mean merging. It means a union of 2 individuals in love for all eternity. It means relationship. There's a different kind of liberation. It's Bhakti Bhagavata liberation. So it is a part of the unlimited Bhagavan. It's self-manifest and perfect and lies within one's heart. Everybody agrees with that. It's not that the Bhagavata rejects the other part. If you want to just be absorbed in your own Atman, you can. It doesn't put that down. All of these sages, we've read them. We've read Śukadeva. They all realize their Atman. There's no way that is that disparaged. It's a wonderful, noble attainment. But this text says it's not the end of the journey, because there is a God that is distinct from the soul. This is not Advaita Vedanta. So that God is eternally distinct. This is Vaishnava. This is Vaishnava Vedanta. This is the philosophy of Krishnamacharya. This is the philosophy of Guruji Iyengar. I keep saying that because I want you to feel some familiarity with figures that you respect and accept as authorities. That's why I keep bringing in Guru Iyengar and Krishnamacharya. They are Vaishnavas. They accept this tradition. There's a distinction between God and the Atman. All right. So there's various different ways of fixing the mind on Bhagavan. So some people, verse 8, contemplate with concentration, right, or dharana, on the Supreme Being as situated in the inner space of the heart within their own bodies. This is the Paramatma in the Bhagavatam. The size of the span of a hand. He has 4 arms, right? Vishnu always has 4 arms, lotus, disc, conch, and club. He has smiling face and eyes large as lotuses. His cloth is yellowish, like the filament of a kadamba flower. His ornaments brilliant with... And so we get this, all this, this is standardized description of Vishnu. Just like Krishna has a standardized description that devotees, and it's repeated again and again and again. So you internalize it. So when you're not reading the books, all of that, you've read it so many times, the samskaras are so fixed in your mind, you know exactly what your beloved Ishtadevata looks like. He has armlets, he has necklets, he has a yellow dhoti. Krishna has a peacock feather, he has a flute, he has beautiful alligator earrings, and you can and then you've read it so many times that you can manifest it in your meditation, and you keep that form fixed in your mind. That's your beloved Bhagavan. And so he gives a description: tender bud-like feet are placed by the masters of yogis into the receptacle of their hearts. Okay, here he is. He's adorned with a belt, valuable racer, all of this. These are all pure. All of these ornaments are made of pure consciousness. They're not the gold and the jewels of our prakritic, experience. They're not made of the 3 gunas. Remember, guna tita, beyond the gunas. These forms and all of these forms and qualities are made of pure consciousness. This world is a reflection of that, my friends. Plato had it right. He really had. He got the basic infrastructure right. He didn't know what the shadows were. He didn't know what the light was, but he understood that this world must be a reflection of something else. He understood that. It can't be it can't be that the truth can't be impersonal, and then this effect is full of personality and qualities and forms. That doesn't make any sense. That the cause is so different from the effect. The effect must have forms and personalities and so forth. For the cause must have all of those things for the effect to have them. But anyway, let's just read the text. With one's mind, here, the abundant grace is evident from the play of his eyebrows and the brightness of his happy, playful smile. This is God. This is a vision of God. You create a deity, just like you can create a deity of marble or brass. That's temples in India have their deities. People at home have their deities. You create a deity made of samskara in your mind, and you focus the mind on it. And then Bhagavan appears in it, manifests in it, and he breaks through. He breaks through the prakritic mental image that you have, and he breaks through and manifests his pure Satchidananda form at the end of the day. But for that to happen, we have to be free of all desire. It has to be 100%. It has to be 100%. I mean, it's no different than even mundane relationships. Most people, if they're in a monogamous relationship, they want their partner to just have them and nobody else. I mean, I know nowadays in 21st century, of course, that's no longer the case in many instances. But I think it's still very much true for many people. If you have a relationship, you want your beloved to be exclusively yours. Well, Bhagavan is no different. But Bhagavan's the price tag is higher. Not just but we have to give up all other desires. Even for the Atman, you have to do that. Even for the Atman, you have to be free of all the kleshas, klesha tanukarana, all ragas. Cannot experience the Atman if there's any raga left. So that's actually standard. That's common. That's standard. Buddhism, Jainism, all these traditions accept that. Attain that, whatever that ultimate state is, whether it's your own Atman, whether it's relationship with Bhagavan, whether it's the Buddhist nirvana, which is another state altogether, whether it's the state of Advaita Vedanta, all of them require that one exclusive dedication, which means being free of all other desire, only one desire. And for the seeker of the Atman, the only desire is the desire for the Atman. For the lover of God, the only desire is Bhagavan, Raga Nuga Bhakti. That's the only desire you can have. It's not a klishta desire, it's aklishta. It's not a body-mind desire, it's a desire for the absolute. So that's the price tag. Okay, let's finish up. Let me just mute everybody. Mute. Why does it keep coming back to me? So these are different kinds of meditation. You can do mantra, and Om is given later on in this text. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is given as the mantra, and also Om Namo Narayanaya is given in this text, which is like, as I've said, is the mantra of Krishnamacharya and Guruji, at least their tradition, Sri Vaishnava. But another type of way of fixing the mind, you can do Om, you can do Om, the mantra, or here's another way. With one's mind, one should focus at each limb consecutively, from the feet up to the smiling face of Krishna. As one's intelligence becomes progressively purified, one should move on from the previous lower part of the Lord's anatomy and fix one's mind on the next higher part. Until Bhakti Yoga is awakened by this form. No, let's skip that. Pardon? Oh, I'm not sharing? So is that not sharing? Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna have to skip a little bit. Here, what are the Yoga Bhaktas that they long for the supreme abode of Vishnu? I keep stressing it because this type of liberation has not really impacted the West in the same way as kind of Neo-Advaita and Patanjalian notions of liberation have impacted the West. Remember, it's not that one is right and one is wrong. There are different destinations, my friends. Why do we think it's all one? That's silly. The absolute is multifaceted, multivariegated. If you seek your own Atman, then you can attain that. But no, there are other destinations claimed by other texts, and the other texts are very clear. They're not the same. If someone wants to say they're the same, that's not what the texts are saying. You're imposing some other interpretation on the text that the text is not saying. The text is saying there are different destinations, and one of them is the abode of Vishnu and the abode of Krishna, depending on which form of Bhagavan captures your heart. So the yogis long for the supreme abode of Vishnu, desiring to abandon all that is illusory by the process of elimination. If you know this from the Upanishads, neti, neti, neti. The Bhagavatam is a traditional Vedanta text. It sees itself as just elaborating on the Vedanta, taking things that are seed form in the Vedanta and developing them and bringing them to full fruition. So neti means not this, not this, not this, not this, Brahman is not this material, it's not the chair, it's not the table. On the one hand, you can say it's not this, not this, not this, or you could just say it is everything. There's two different ways of going about, and they both are useful to think about Brahman in different ways. On the one hand, it is everything. On the other hand, it isn't these material things of our mundane perception that we see with avidya. So neti means not this. So desiring to abandon all that is illusory by the process of elimination, not this, not this, not this, because these material forms are temporary, so they're not ultimate. Only the Atman is not temporary, it doesn't dissolve. All forms dissolve, the tree dissolves into its atoms. So those yogis give up misidentification with the body, asmita, and embrace his adorable feet in their hearts with exclusive devotion at every moment. And every moment means every moment, my friends. This is the practice. Just like Patanjali, you have to keep the mind nirodha at every moment if you want to have a Sarupa experience. To the extent you want to have, while you're in that Swarupa experience, and for as long as you want to hold that Swarupa, your near bija experience, the mind has to be in a state of nirodha every moment. Minute it isn't, then you snap out of that state. You're not in that state anymore. The mind is agitated, captures consciousness, and consciousness now becomes reabsorbed in the mind. So for as long as that Svarupa experience is to last, the mind has to, at every moment, has to be controlled. Niroditaha is the past passive participle. Well, the same with Bhagavan. Not just that you think of Bhagavan in puja, Bhagavan has to be in the mind at every moment, either in the form of the mantra or in the form of some of these visuals, visualizing that we're reading about. And here's classical. Now here's another path. This is the Patanjali. Look, you should block the anus with the heel. This has got a little bit of some of the stuff from Tantra. He should leave his body in the following manner. The sage who is situated in Brahman, who is vigorous, whose mind is controlled, who has gained wisdom from the sacred text, should leave his body in the following manner, right? When you're really ready, mind is fixed, no more use of this world, that's it. Want to check out, you want to go to the abode of God. How do you do that? So here's this. This is not necessarily recommended, by the way. The rest of the text is, but this is an option. It's, it's only, and 18,000 verses, we find it here, we find it in one or two other places. It's not the main practice at all. But the Bhagavatam is, accepting all these different practices. So you can block the anus with the heel and raise the prana up through the chakras. I think this is the only two places where the chakras are mentioned. The Bhagavatam's not interested in chakras and psychic bodies and siddhis and all the prana, not interested in any of that. It's interested in love of God, but it doesn't reject it. It just thinks that's all kind of mundane. Just like Patanjali, talks of the siddhis and then says, well, they're not of interest to the yogis. It does the same thing. If you're interested in Atman, why would you be interested in the siddhis? So then you raise the air up. So anyway, this is all of this Anahata chakra, right, in the navel. You can read this because we're running out of time. Up through the eyebrows, and then you push your body out through the. Okay, this is accepted, but it's not in any way encouraged. It's not the main, by any means. It's not the main practice in the Bhagavatam. The main practice is not this. This is kind of an artificial, almost like a physiological, kind of pranic way of pushing the Atman out of the body, through manipulating the pranas. And, up through the life air, up through the top of the head, right? Here it is. From there, we should raise it up to the eyebrows, right? All the 7 outlets of the body closed off, right? All of the outlets. After holding the life there without any effort, with his fixed gaze, he should eject it through the crown of the head, Sahasrara chakra. This is all Kundalini yoga, essentially. Although Kundalini is not mentioned here, by the way, at all. But the chakras are, and this kind of a process of raising up the prana. But this is not the practice of the Bhagavatam. However, it's mentioned, but just because it's you can use this technique if you want. It's just by no means at all the primary technique. The primary technique is just you fix your mind in love. You don't have to worry about all this artificially pushing your, by your own willpower. No, you just surrender to Bhagavan. Bhagavan will take you whenever Bhagavan wants to take you. You don't have to do all of this physiological stuff, but it's there, it's accepted, it's respected, it's honorable, and there are yogis who do it, and the Bhagavatam certainly is by no means dismissive of it. But it's only mentioned, I think, twice in 18,000 verses. All the rest of the time, it's simply hearing and chanting and hearing and fixing the mind. None of this kind of chakra, let's just call it physiological manipulation. That's not the primary method, even though it's accepted. Okay, you get the point. So then you go up to the abode of Lord Vishnu. And then you have, then there's a subtle body, and the animate mystic powers, they manifest, and so on. Then you have to go through the various realms of the universe, and then you can witness it all, witness the universe, and you get to the Brahma's realm. It's still in samsara realm. There's no sorrow, no old age, no disease, no death. And then you discard your body. Then with his mind, the yogi fearlessly returns the body to the elements, merges them all, earth to water, and then without haste, after manifesting an effulgent form, to fire, and so on and so forth. And then he discards the subtle elements, and finally, his Atman finally attains the supreme soul Vishnu, who is peaceful and blissful. Again, personal relationship. Attaining his blissful nature in that final goal, the yogi enters the divine state and is never again interested in this world. So there's two paths. They're different paths. And that one is also recognized. The two paths which you inquired, O king, are eternal, described in the Vedas. And they come, and Bhagavan Vasudeva had previously spoken about them. So let's get back to what the Bhagavatam is really more interested in and promoting, and that's just simply fixing the mind on God and complete surrender to God. You don't have to use your ego and your yogic virtuosity and your manipulation of prana and sticking your heel in your anus and going up through the... You could do that if you want to. The bhaktas don't. They're not interested in that. They surrender to Bhagavan. Bhagavan will take me anywhere he wants to take me. I don't have to do anything. Surrender. Well, that's what it means to be surrendered. You're not using your willpower. You're completely and utterly dependent on Bhagavan, and Bhagavan takes me whenever Bhagavan wants to take me. And hopefully gives me a little place in the divine realm with some kind of a beautiful relationship with Bhagavan. So, therefore, O king, right now answering the questions, there's 8 questions. It is Bhagavan Hari who should be heard, recited, and remembered about by people with all their hearts, in all places, at all times. That's it. That's bhakti. No, all places, all times, all the time. What do we do with the mind? Remember, what is the Parīkṣit's question? What is the dharma of one about to die? What do you think about? What do you remember? What do you chant? So it's Hari, Bhagavan, who should be heard, recited, and remembered. That means, remembered means that you keep that samskara of Bhagavan in the mind, with all their hearts, in all places, in all times. Bhagavan is the soul of the saintly persons, those who drink the nectar of stories about him, these stories that we're reading, and in the 10th book is really the stories of Bhagavan, attain through the vessels of the ears. Where do the stories come from? They enter in the mind through the vessel of the ears. The stories come in, we hear them, or nowadays we read, they come through the eyes because we read them. They come in through the ears, and then what do? They enter the mind, and what do they do? Purify the heart. The heart doesn't mean it means the mind. Whenever the text talk about the heart, it means the mind, because the Atman and the Chitta are sort of located in the heart region and then pervade the body from there. So they purify their heart from the contamination of sense objects. That means raga, because sense objects enter the mind, and they're either raga or dvesha. You either liked it or didn't like that sense impression. So that's a contamination. It means that it's a klesha, becomes a klesha. If you desire it, it becomes a klesha. Now that's going to be on your mind, and that's going to occupy your mind. So if your raga is occupying your mind, then you're not thinking of Bhagavan. It's really quite simple. So if you want to think of Bhagavan all the time, then you can't be thinking of other things. So that's what it's all about, being free of desire. Even if you want your Atman, you have to do the same exact thing. You have to be thinking of your Atman all the time. And that's why we have to be free of raga dveshas, because if there's raga dveshas, we're thinking of them. It's pretty straightforward psychology. So, those who drink the nectar of stories about him attain through the vessels of the ears, purify the heart from the contamination of sense objects, and attain his lotus feet as their destination. It means his lotus feet, his personal presence. Feet means feet. Bhagavan has feet. And there's, of course, beautiful transcendent feet made of pure consciousness. In this way, the questions your highness posed to me has been answered on behalf of all wise people in human society who are about to die. Okay, give me 5 more minutes, my friends. I want to respect your time, and then we'll have questions. If anybody wants to stay for questions, you're welcome to. All right, so he summarizes. Irrespective of whether one is free of desire, or full of all desires, or desires of liberation, moksha, it doesn't matter. Whether we're free of desires, we've worked hard, or whether we still have nonsense desires, or whether we want moksha, it doesn't matter. Irrespective of any of that, one should intensely worship the Supreme Person through the practice of bhakti yoga if one is intelligent, because that bhakti will purify all those desires. So whether you don't have them, you do have them, or even if you want your own Atman, you do bhakti yoga and let it work its magic. Bhakti yoga is absorbing the mind in Bhagavan in so many different ways. The form, if you want to do that heel in the anus business, you could do that too. and do all that kundalini, fine, raise it all up through the chakra, do that. If you want to follow that method, good luck. But doesn't matter. Whatever method that you use, the goal is fixing the mind of Bhagavan. The attainment of the highest good, even for those who worship the celestial beings. This is just mundane Vedic ritualism, nothing to do with Bhagavan, just celestial beings, and you want to get, that's just beings in samsara who can give you progeny, they can satisfy your desires. But even for those who worship, right, the Vedic ritualists, even for them, the highest good is the unflinching devotion to Bhagavan. And how do you get it, my friends? Attain from association from the devotees of Bhagavan. If you want to get bhakti, you've got to hang out with people who have bhakti. If you want to get bhakti, we get it from other bhaktas. We have to have that's sangha, association. Patanjali is the opposite. You want to do Chitta Vritti Nirodha, you got to make sure no one's around. You don't want any distractions at all. You don't want any vrittis. This is not like that. So you've got to make friends with bhaktas if you want your spiritual journey to be inspired. Okay. So then Shaunika says, well, what did Parīkṣit do? And I think we're sort of running out of time, and I want to respect. I don't mind going on, but we did 2 hours. It's probably pretty good. Does anyone want to say anything? Or, push back on anything or ask any questions? How's Happy Jack?
Yeah, I've got a question, definitely. Thank you so much for your time. I love it. And so the question I have is like a practical svadhyaya question. So, last year, many of us, I see Ellen's smiling face and Pam and Andrew, we got to read the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto with you during the Rutgers course. And, I during that semester, I went through it twice. But I guess I also have this desire, I'll be honest, it's a desire, it's an attachment. I want to read the entire Bhagavatam from chapter 1 to chapter 12. And I've got into it a few times. And when I start reading the purports, which are very interesting, it takes a lot of time. And I'm not saying I won't do it, but I wondered if you had any tips over the years, if you think about the ways you've engaged the book. Is there some helpful ways to go through it, like once without purports? Or I know now you focus on the 10th canto. Would you recommend all of us eventually to read all 12? Just kind of, what advice might you have for us?
Well, I think the text says you can jump in anywhere and get get the taste, but that if you read it from beginning to end, I think the text says you attain bhakti. So someone like yourself, you're studying, you're doing the MA, don't read all the commentaries. Read the text, and then if there's some text that's really interesting, you can go into you can peek at the commentary, or if Prabhupada is saying something interesting. But I think I think it would be useful. Start at the beginning. Now you've read bits and pieces of it. You read the 10th. You've jumped around, so you have a sort of sense of it. But now I would recommend that you start at the beginning and read it consistently. And since you don't have time, because it would take you a couple of years, given all your other things, your studies going on, then skip the commentaries. Feel free to check one out if there's a particularly interesting verse, or you want to see what something means. Of course, by all means. But otherwise, don't feel that if you don't read the commentaries, somehow that's lacking. You can read the text itself. Of course you can. Read the text. And then later on, once you have more time, then you can, you keep reading it. I mean, I've read it. This is for me, it's a canonical text. The minute I leave academe, I won't be reading anything else. It would take many lifetimes to really study the Bhagavatam. It's very rich Vedantically. It's incredibly rich poetically, and there's a whole aspect of it. I haven't even studied like the poetic excellence of it in the 10th book. So you can spend, just start to develop a relationship with it as your primary canonical text. And then, down the road, right? Obviously, if you're going to do Hinduism and teach, and people want to, they want the Yoga Sutras, because everybody, that's kind of the canonical text for the yoga community. So that's fine. And you teach the Yoga Sutras. And of course, the Gita is always relevant and always, but it doesn't tell us much about bhakti. The Gita, it tells us bhakti is the highest. It tells us bhakti is, it establishes bhakti as the highest practice. It doesn't really say very much about how to practice it. It doesn't give us any leelas of Krishna. It doesn't tell, so but still, I'm not in any way dissing it. But at the end of the day, when you're like Parīkṣit, metaphorically, then you've got 7 days to live. That's all you want to have by your bedside is the Bhagavata Purana. So start developing that relationship now, and and for now, I think it's perfectly fine. Just read the verses, and are you still studying Sanskrit?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. So then you can get two for the price of one. Nothing wrong with that. And by the way, there's let's be clear about desire. Desire to read the Bhagavatam has nothing to do with it's aklishta. Don't confound that with the ragas of the kleshas. This is aklesha. This is desire for Bhagavan. Not only is it okay, it's indispensable to bhakti. What is bhakti other than desire for Bhagavan? What else is it? What is love other than the desire for the beloved? So don't confuse klishta. Patanjali has this in verse sutra number 5. He says there's klishta and aklishta vrittis. The commentaries don't develop that very much in those commentaries there. I think they miss a bit of an opportunity there. Aklishta vrittis are the opposite of the klishtas. So the opposite of raga, okay, it's vairagya, but also raga for Bhagavan is the opposite of raga for sense objects. So, but anyway, so don't think that's a desire. Not only is it is the core of a bhakti, it is the core element of bhakti is the desire for Bhagavan. Yeah. So yeah. So therefore, just read the verses. Start at the beginning. Now you've jumped around a bit, and you've read the 10th, and we did stuff at Rutgers and all of that. Now read the verses, and then go back and read them again, and they'll be completely different every time you read them. And they'll speak to you because you'll be in a different place. You read it, and next year you go back and read it again. Your mind is different. You've developed wisdom in certain areas, and maybe kind of slid back a bit in other areas, and that. The tradition says that is Ishvara. So if that's Ishvara will communicate to you through the Shastra and will manifest a verse and capture your attention with a verse that you need to be aware of at that moment. And maybe you read that verse 100 times before, and you kind of knew what it meant and know what the Sanskrit means, know what the subject, object, the verb is, and all of that stuff. But it hadn't spoken to you. It hasn't guided you. It hasn't. But then every time you study, something will speak to you. And if you think of the Shastra, you think of the text as Bhagavan, as a personal being who can come in the Murti, he can come in the deity, he can come in the mantra, he can come in so many ways. And one way is that he can not just manifest. It's actually called Shastra Avatar. It's considered to be one of the avatars, one of the forms of divine presence is the sacred text. And other traditions say the same thing, by the way. So then every time you read with a devotional, with that desire to know God and encounter God, and you're doing that by surrendering your mind to the Bhagavatam, God reciprocates, Bhagavan reciprocates. And every time you read, one of those verses was not just one, but at least, but those verses will communicate to you. And the next day, something else will. And then a year later, you go back and start again, and it's like a completely different thing. You even though you're sort of familiar with the storyline, okay, I know how the story goes, but the teachings will impact your heart and inspire you in completely different, new and ever meaningful ways.
Love it.
Full future, Happy Jack.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot better than sticking our foot up our ass. I laugh so hard when you say that.
But the Bhagavatam accepts all these other accepts it. There's no sectarianism here. It's just that Bhagavatam is saying, look, there is the Atman, sure, but there is a higher Atman. It's not non-negotiable about that. That's why it's the Bhagavata Purana. It's the Purana about Bhagavan. Bhagavata means Bhagavan. So it's not negotiable that Bhagavan is the ultimate. It's liberal, even liberal with Bhagavan. Yes, sure, Bhagavan takes different forms. It says it'll take whatever form you want. So it's not even going to be in your face that it has to be Krishna. It will be okay, Vishnu, Shiva, or any form you want. But Bhagavan is distinct from the soul. It's not going to negotiate on that because that's its ontology. But other than that, it's all these other practices, like the Kundalini, anus in your bum. It's going to take those, but it's going to Ishwarize them. It's going to Bhagavanize them. It's going to take it, say, okay, you want to do it that way, but keep Bhagavan as the goal. That's what it's going to do. All these other processes that are out there, even Vedic ritualism. You want to do your Vedic rituals, throw stuff in fire, fine. Do it to Vishnu, the Lord of sacrifice. So it will accept all these other practices, but it will, where it's non-negotiable is that Bhagavan is the goal of it all. Yeah.
Wonderful. I hope we've recorded this.
We did not record a single thing. Oh my God. And there's folks who can't attend. And they're at different time zones. Or you got to remind me, my friends. My memories, let's make it a collective dharma. Please. Now this is not recorded. And nothing we can do about it. So next Friday, can you please, everybody, Eleonora, please, Happy Jack, Ellen, everyone, please remind me to hit the record button. Because there's like 50, there's a ton of folks. I'm going to get a bunch of emails now. And I'm really sorry about that. So please, I'm 65. Memory's not what it used to be. After 65, you get your senior moments. You're entitled to your senior moments. What do you think, Carl? Senior moments, 65? What's the cutoff point?
Oh, well, I'm at 72. I think
Okay.
we're getting there. But my question is this. I've been listening to Adam Keen on yoga. I listened to a number of your presentations. And how the hell does one get to where you'd like others to get without having had the experience, the amazing experience you've had since you were 19, 20 years old? It's hard to do it through a book. I mean, you practice, you do your best, Kim, but some part of me feels like without your very unusual, amazing experience, I can't see me getting to the place with this Krishna. I've been reading Patanjali translation since I was 40. And I've just heard about this through you. And I'm so glad to have the advantage of having your spirit along with this text. What an unusual, stay alive for a few more years, please. What an unusual satsang this is, to be with the creator, the translator.
Carl, I don't, I haven't seen Krishna. I haven't had a vision of God or a Swarupa experience or anything like that. But what can I say? One has to realize the futility of everything else. It seems to me the Sarvam Dukkam, the first noble truth of Buddhism. One has to get serious about the spiritual path. One has to realize the futility of everything else. One has to embrace that. And we live in a society that tries to, if you start going around saying, "Oh, life sucks," people are going to think you're depressed. They're going to, send you they're going to recommend medication. So one has to embrace that realization. One has to, really be present in life and realize that one is not satisfied, that one is not fulfilled, that one is getting older, and that it's still, there's the hole in the heart, that everything one does somehow or other lacks real meaning. It doesn't get, so when we're really deeply, deeply, deeply grounded in the futility of trying to satisfy desires, then that's the first, it seems to me, impetus to think, okay, let me just try to be a little bit more sincere and attentive to my spiritual practices. And then the practices themselves then kick in. And then they slowly purify the mind, which means what? It means that these desires start to get destroyed. Purified means they get burnt. So what it really means with this talk of purification is the samskara is there, the desire, the memory is there, but it loses its potency. So the memory of Ben and Jerry ice cream is there, but whereas before that was a pleasant memory that put pressure on the mind to go and buy Ben and Jerry ice cream, it loses that potency. It just becomes a memory of a sense object with no power. So on the one hand, the practices do that. They burn up the kleshas. And on the other hand, the mind starts to become sattvic. Its very nature changes. And as it becomes sattvic, it automatically becomes attracted to the texts and the practices. So all of this is the path. And I would say start by paying attention to how one is always unfulfilled. Next time one goes out to try to satisfy desire, go to a movie, go to a restaurant, go here, go to a social function with the intention, and the mind is sort of creating this sense of anticipation and I'm going to have fun. This is going to be fun. Well, pay attention and see if it's really fun. That's where it starts. And be honest. And then if one is really honest, one begins to realize that actually it's not fun. It didn't fulfill me. It wasn't perfect. And once that reaches a critical mass, that kind of thinking, then the sort of logic of looking elsewhere and trying and giving more prime time the spiritual, study and then some kind of, tapas. There has to be some tapas. Start in a reasonable, mature, non-fanatical way. Start to control the desires in a doable sort of way, and slowly, and then fold in svadhyaya. And if you're interested in like Krishna tradition or a theistic tradition, then start reading the Bhagavatam. And then start, taking a mantra and interacting with the mantra, not just as a prop, not just as a mental prop, but actually start engaging that mantra as if it's your beloved Lord. I think of it as pillow talk. When I do japa in the morning, I think I'm whispering the name of my beloved, and it's kind of like, this is my alone time with Krishna. That's why you have to do it first thing in the morning. Before you do all these, before you make your chai and check your email, because then the mind starts getting caught up with all of that. So first thing, get up in the morning, take a poop, wash your bum, take a shower, and brush your teeth and do your japa. And that's and then it's you and the mantra softly, lovingly, gently. That's your pillow talk with Bhagavan, and then let Bhagavan then reciprocate and catch your heart. You're taking your steps, and let Bhagavan take his steps towards you. That's the practice. That's not everyone. That's what everyone has done. All the sages we've read about, people right here in our little assembly this evening. That's what it is. That's what we do. No one. We're all the same. We're all embodied being trapped by the mind. So it's not like anyone is somehow more. It is different in any sort of way, other than some of us are trying to take our little steps, and we're fed up with suffering, and we have a little somehow or other. Krishna's caught a little bit of our hearts, and we can never, and we can't let go. Sometimes we try to get fed up. Oh, Krishna, where are you? I've been 45 years. All right, that's it. I've had enough of you. You go off on a little huff for a couple of hours, and you come back. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going anywhere. So that's the path. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes if you let yourself get trapped by a desire and you don't want to let it go, the desire we just saw with Parīkṣit, it gets into tamas. And then you can get angry at Bhagavan. You can get angry at Bhagavan and say, why don't you satisfy my desire? Because at that point, you're in illusion. You're in a state of tamas. So you're not seeing things clearly. You're not realizing this is my nonsense. This is my foolishness. You're thinking, Bhagavan, why aren't you? I'm such a great bhakta. Why aren't you fight? And then you get into the state of tamas, and you can have you can wave your fist at the heavens for, a few minutes. That's all right. Look, a real relationship, if it's a real relationship, they do that once in a while. What's the big deal? And then you come out like Parīkṣit did, and you reclaim your senses, and you get back to a plate of supper, and you think, oh my God, what the hell was all that about? And then you go, and then you get a nice flower and offer it to Bhagavan. I'm sorry, mate. Sorry about that. I had a little rajasic hiccup there, a little tamasic moment. That's what a real relationship's all about, my friends. What's wrong with that? I mean, eventually you hope to get beyond that, but maybe that's part of the path too. That's all right. I don't beat myself up when I have those little hissy fits at my beloved. Yes, Maureen.
Hi. You mentioned earlier you were talking about all the various schools and what they believe, and you were talking about really we're in our souls just a spark of Bhagavan, or I just wanted to, if you could repeat that. I get a little mixed up about all the different ways all these different schools kind of think of us humans.
Well, the Atman within us, let's just use the language of all the traditions, of the Vedanta language.
Excuse me, why not start the recording now?
Because it's, we've got 5 minutes. And
even what you're saying right now is worthwhile.
Recording in progress.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the question is, and this, of course, is a question that plays out in the Vedanta Sutra, in the Vedanta tradition, over the last 2,500 years. So the spark within us is Atman. Now the question is, what's the relationship between Atman and Brahman? Now in the Advaita non-dual tradition, they're exactly the same thing. The Atman is just, it imagines it's separate because of illusion, because of Maya, because of avidya. Then it considers itself to be an individualized separate entity. And when it attains knowledge, vidya, then it realizes that it is the all-pervading supreme Brahman, and there's nothing else. There's no Ishvara. There's actually, in that state, there is nothing else at all, not the world, and there is simply an experience of eternal, infinite, all-pervading bliss. Now, the theistic traditions would say, yes, you can have that experience. That experience is available to the Atman. The Atman, when it is in its own nature, that nature is potentially infinite and eternal and certainly blissful. But the Bhagavata traditions, the Vaishnava traditions would say, but actually that Atman is not the supreme Atman, number one, and it is an eternal individual. Even if it can have an infinite experience, it's an eternal individual, and it's different from all other Atmans, and it most certainly is different from that Paramatma, the supreme Atman that we call Ishvara Bhagavan. And you can never, ever, ever be Bhagavan. So those are the Vaishnava traditions. They take a different view than the Advaita traditions. So those traditions, the Atman is a spark. Sometimes it's called a spark of that supreme being, eternally. And those traditions, the yogis in those traditions, as we've read with Shuka, as we read last week with Narad, as we read with Vyas, they've attained that experience of the infinite, eternal Atman beyond the gunas. They've had it. They've had the Advaita experience, but they don't want to linger in that because what they want is a relationship with God. They don't want. Because when you're absorbed in there's no relationship, there's no other, there's no sense of individualness. There's just an infinite sense of blissful, all-pervading consciousness. So those, but the yogis that have discovered Bhagavan, that have heard about Bhagavan, whose minds have been attracted to Bhagavan, they seek Bhagavan. So they want to go beyond just their immersion in their own self, and they want to have an eternal relationship with the source of everything, who is ultimately sustaining their own very being, who is sustaining the world as well as all of the souls. So those traditions, the souls are eternally individual. And Bhagavan is eternally individual. Now, but Patanjali comes in that tradition, because for him, the Ishvara is a Purusha Vishesha. Vishesha means a specific individual. A Vishesha means a specific entity. So the difference between the Advaita tradition, the non-dual traditions, and the dualists, although that's not quite the right term for them, is that the dualists see an eternal distinction between one soul and another, and between the souls and God. Just like a Christian would do, and the Jews do, and the Muslims do. They would be dualists, if we want to use the language of the Vedanta. The non-dualists, all of that evaporates. There is no God, there is no world, there are no other souls. Once you attain enlightenment, it's just all-pervading, infinite, eternal, blissful Brahman.
So is it the spark that within us that's wanting that personal relationship with Bhagavan?
Well, it's the mind that we have this instrument called the mind that has to decide what destination. The mind is an instrument, and the mind then decides which path to pursue and which destination, which goal is more of interest or attractive. That's where you choose your spiritual path. But I want to stress that the paths do not take you to the same place. I know there is the kind of cheesy, new agey, it's all the same. It's not me that's saying they're not. All of the texts are saying that they're not the same, and they debate each other. So for us in the 1960s and, New Age spirituality to come up with this idea that they all lead to the same place, that's just modern New Agey sound bites. That's not what the text is saying. The text is saying you want an Atman experience, and then Sankhya will take you there. Patanjali will take you there. You want an Advaita experience, and certain way of reading the Upanishads through Shankara's commentary will take you there. If you want an eternal relationship with Bhagavan, then the Bhagavata Purana will take you there. If you want to enter into the realm of Shiva theology, then there are various Shaiva paths that with different ways of taking you to different aspects of Shiva. Kashmiri Shaivism being one, and so forth. So we svadhyaya, we have free will, we have a human form of life, our time is running out, the clock is ticking, we have all of the texts, we just need to decide that we're going to use our life to find our spiritual path and follow it. Because if we don't, and we just sit and watch telly, then we will die, and where will we go? Not to a place of any of the liberated states, none of them. We come back. And according to our karma, that could be, who knows what that's going to look like. So, Svadhyaya is there, and there are sincere sadhakas who have really given their lives to a path that can illuminate that path, and others, great sadhakas, can illuminate other paths. But at some point, you take that leap of faith. Otherwise, we're jumping around like philosophers. Philosophers will always always, by definition, you constantly critiquing philosophies, analyzing them, reading the opposing point. I sit in on philosophy classes at Rutgers. You read a book, and then you read the objections to the book, and then you read the critique of the book, and then you read the response to that, and that's it. That's what you do. Then you read the next book, and the critique of that, and the response to that. It's just it's buddhi-vritti. It's buddhi-vritti, and then at the time, the moment of death, what's the good of where the hell is all that? What has all that done for you? If there is an Atman, and if there is a law of karma, and if some of this is true, or all of it is true, what the heck is that going to help you for? How is that going to help you at the moment of death? All of that intellectual accumulation. So use the intellect, do svadhyaya, but at some point, you got to take the leap of faith and say, okay, this path, somehow or other, with my existing samskaras from all my past lives, and who knows what practices I did or didn't do in the past, but all of them coming together, are giving me this sense that this path somehow or other is attracting me, is somehow or other philosophically more coherent, even though it might have a few iffy bits, but altogether as a package, it seems to be more coherent. And I'm going to, before you die, jump in and just go for it. Use your intelligence to decide. Philosophy and all of that, reason, argumentation, to decide where to take the leap of faith. But you have to take a leap of faith, because truth is beyond the grasp of the intellect, right from the earliest Upanishads. Mind cannot go there. So at some point you have to make a leap of faith and trust the path, trust the beings over the centuries that have trod the path. And just, and there's going to be some, as I say, there's some iffy little bits here and there. There are some things that are going to obviously clash with modern ways of thinking and modern cosmology and physics, fine. But at some point, if you're going to have a spiritual journey, unless you want to do it on your own, but then you're just chitta-vrittiing again. If we don't follow a path, then we're just trapped. It's the same old chitta-vritti under the name of my spiritual journey. It's really my chitta-vritti, actually. So if you pay attention to it, so better take a path, have the humility, accept that, beings much greater than us have handed this down. They're not ripping us off. They get nothing out of this. They've renounced the world. Why the heck? What are they? Simply trying to help us, like Shuka, and just go for it. Pick a path and do whatever that mantra is. Chant that mantra. Whatever the practices are, do it. Before the hair goes completely white. Right now it's silver.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mine is definitely silver too. Any other questions, my friends? Jim, what are you laughing for, mate? Look at all that silver hair. Any other questions?
Edwin, I've got a question.
Yeah.
What is it that, and I guess my rational mind tries to understand this, which is kind of difficult, but what is it that keeps pulling you towards absorbing yourself into bhakti?
Me?
I came at this through first Buddhism and then Advaita and then Patanjali, and then I ended up into this through your help. And it's just, it absorbs you so much that I can't put the book down. Like every night I have to read and I have to do my job in the morning. It's can you speak to that? What is it that?
It's Bhagavan.
Yeah.
It's Bhagavan. Bhagavan is all attractive. The word Krishna means all attractive. The name, it means black. But the verbal, Sanskrit verbal root krish, Krishna is, you put a ner nominal suffix on the Sanskrit root. So krish means to attract, to pull. So when we take our little tiny baby steps towards Krishna, Bhagavan wants us. Bhagavan's a person. He wants us all to. He wants to love. He loves everybody. I mean, this is 101 theism. Any theistic tradition would say this. So when we take our baby steps and we go through I'm the same. I went through Buddhism and all of that, and in the early days. But then we turn our, we begin our little bhakti practices with a little sincerity. Then Krishna manifests in the heart, and he attracts us, and the words attract us. And because he comes through the words, he comes in the japa. So the mantra attracts our minds if we chant it with devotion, not just mechanically, not just nirodha, that's there, but it's not just nirodha. It's not just mechanical nirodha, it wanders up, bring it back nirodha, but not just mechanical as it could be in Patanjali. No, we do that, but we're offering our love, our heart, our surrender, we're surrendering helplessly. We can't pull ourselves out of samsara. We can't do it. We cannot do it by ourselves. So we surrender to Bhagavan on the one hand because we're suffering. Okay, that's selfish. And on the one hand, because we want, Sure, but we want to have a relationship with God, but God has to give that to us. We can't manifest that in our own mind. Love of God does not come from within our own mind. It's a gift that's bestowed for Bhagavan that permeates the mind. It's a Shakti that comes out from outside the mind and permeates the mind. It's not in the mind. So that actual love is a gift. So we can't say we love God. What we can say is we read about it, we're inspired by it, we're somehow attracted to this beautiful vision of Bhagavan who hides his majesty, and he comes as a little toddler and he toddles about and he falls over and he bruises his knee. It's so delightful that we begin to find our mind becoming attracted to that. Then we do our bhakti yoga, and then Bhagavan reciprocates, and that's why we're attracted, because Bhagavan is Krish pulling us. Krish. He's pulling us towards him. All we need is sincerity and humility. But it's not always going to be easy. I know, I've been on this path 45 years, and in the first few years, all of us are, I have, few monk friends from the early days. Some left and went off and, went back into samsara, and then mostly they all remain bhaktas, but some just got embroiled in the world. Maybe they'll come back. I'm sure they'll come back, and and some just try to hang in there a bit, and other, whatever. But many of us agreed that in the beginning we were just so ecstatic, and it was just so wonderful to be freed from all the desires that we had, and all of we came out of the counterculture, my generation, and all of those illusions and those pressures, and it was just, shaved our heads, and we took new names, and we wore saffron and all of that. But Bhagavan, and I think this is true for many, in the beginning gives us this wonderful taste, but Bhagavan withdraws. Just like in the gopi story. Krishna was there with the gopis and then he disappears. And then eventually he reappears and he says, well, I did that to sort of increase your love. So after the initial kind of wonderful ecstatic kind of being free from all that material nonsense and finding this wonderful devotional path of love and this beautiful vision of God, Krishna withdraws a little bit, and because we need, it has to be free will. So it's we who have to give up all of the desires, all of them. So we have to sort of do the work, and so there can be the dark night of the soul, as Saint John of the Divine. It was so true what Saint John said, the Divine said. There's the dark night of the soul. You go through this period, exactly the same thing within the Christian context. That in the beginning you're full of love of God and you're blissful, and then you go through this. It feels like you've been abandoned, and you're increasing your practices, and from your point of view you're really doing it now. And then all of a sudden there's this just dark night. There's no God. And if you feel on the one hand you can't go back to the material world. You can't go back to chasing desires. That's finished. It's over. Or, frivolous, useless kind of social, like, over. So you've turned your back on all of that, and you've turned towards God, and all of a sudden God goes, and now it's just dark. It's just the dark night. There's nothing. And then you feel desolate. The gopis, read the gopi chapters. They go mad. They go mad when Krishna leaves them. That's the dark night of the soul. And then you got to keep going, and then you realize, look, I still have to work on this. I still have to. There's so many things. I still have this ego. I still have this desire for fame. I still have this sex desire. I still have whatever it is. You start, these deeper levels of desires suddenly manifest. You didn't even know they were there. So you still have work to do, and so you keep going. But you never. Bhagavan doesn't desert you. He just does, it has to be 100%. That's the price tag. 100% free of all other desires. And that, Bhagavan will purify it, but you have to have the intention. It has to be your free will. It has to be you that intensely wants that. And then that intensity then manifests in that you taking the practices more deeply, more sincerely, more helplessly, more beggingly, more, devotionally, and then the Bhagavan through the practices purifies. That it is Bhagavan that's purifying, but the free will, there has to be free will, otherwise it's forced love. It's forced love. It's conscripted love, and that's not love. So don't think that. I guess what I'm saying is, you might have your dark night of the soul down the road, but hang in there. If right now, if you're feeling that, just dive into it, really absorb yourself in it, so that then you'll always remember if you do have a little bit of a fallow, a period of what's the word, fallowness, then you'll remember the bliss, and Bhagavan will always give you little moments just to keep you going.
I'm in my late 40s. I've got a family. I've got a mortgage. I've got 3 daughters. I've got household duties, and that exactly is the struggle of trying to reconcile, because one pulls you one way and the other is just resisting you don't want to let go, because obviously there's obligations, and I find personally the practice of offering it. Yeah. So everything that I try to do, whether it's through my work or through my practice or whatever it is, I'm offering it to Bhagavan, and I'm finding that at least give me some solace.
And that's Bhakti Yoga right there. And even Parīkṣit, he was doing that right up until he got cursed. And he didn't just have 3 mortgage and 3 daughters, he had to run a whole kingdom. So imagine the pressures on his life, but he was always thinking of Vishnu. He was doing it all so you know the process. So yeah, you offer it. Find ways of everything you do. Tell yourself a story. Create a sincere story that you're doing it for Bhagavan. Try to expose your kids to. They may not want that. They're separate entities. They may not want it. So with non-fanatically and it's maturely. Try to expose your kids to it as much as they're willing to, don't push it, because if you push it, they'll develop a klesha. So just as much as possible, have kirtans, take them to kirtans, and, maybe read some stories, or, watch the Ramayana, or get the Ramayana video, however they're able to, find a way of exposing them to some of this, because, later on in life, you don't know what those samskaras, how they're going to manifest in your kids after you're dead and gone. So, find ways of, trying to just bring Bhagavan into everything. I mean, you know what to do. So just do it, and be aware that there is no alternative except suffering. That's helpful too. There's no alternative except more frustration. You want to go back to a well of frustration and meaninglessness and depression? Well, that's an option. That's just lying there waiting. Anytime you want to jump into that hole, it's there. And know that we're all in the same boat. Even people we might look up to, they have their dark, they have their challenges and their periods of frustration. So we're all in the same boat. Any other questions, my friends?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you real quick in regards to missing the recording. If you have the transcript enabled at the bottom of your screen, you might be able to get a copy of that saved at least.
Where? How?
At the very bottom, it'll say like closed captions or transcript next to the record button.
It says show captions.
Yeah, so if you click the little up arrow next to it, you can click view like all live transcript or something.
It says view full transcript?
Yes. If you've had it enabled before the meeting, it'll all come up. But if you haven't, then it'll just be current.
Yeah, but what does that mean? Is it saved?
Is there a lot of stuff there, or just what we're talking about now?
I just clicked it. I don't know. Where did it go? I didn't get any. Can I share my screen with you?
Yes.
What do I do?
Um,
Can you see my screen?
no.
What do you want me to do to share the screen? Click share screen?
Actually, yeah, I don't know if I could see I couldn't see the whole screen. I can only probably see the file you're sharing.
Okay. So tell me, just say that again. Next to the record button, there is the
captions and transcript. So you can click view full transcript.
Yes, but it's gone. I clicked on it. Now that option's not there anymore.
So it should have popped out.
It's doing? It's recording this whole conversation and in the chats.
Yeah, that's what should have happened. But if you go up, if there's a lot of stuff there and not just what's happened since you clicked on it.
Edwin, if you made Taylor co-host, she could see the same buttons you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, and then she can check for the transcript.
How do I make a co-host?
Just go to her name in participants.
Participants, yeah.
And then there's like 3 little buttons. You should have the option to make her co-host.
3 little buttons where?
If you put your cursor over her name.
Oh, over her name, yeah.
And then like there's 3 little dots.
Make co-host, bada boom.
Yeah.
Okay. You're co-host now.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, you might not have had the setting turned on. So
okay. But, yeah, can I just keep it on forever in case I run into this again in the future? Or
yes, you have to
on?
do that outside of the meeting.
Oh, okay. But once it's on, it will always be on?
Yeah, it'll always give you this text. It does not recognize any of the Sanskrit terms, but
it's only a text and it's not going to be the video.
No.
Oh, okay.
But at least it's if you ever forget again, you'll have that.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Thank you, Taylor.
Of course.
Okay, everybody. Any other questions? We don't have a recording and sorry about that. Have a great evening or day, and Jai Sri Radhe Sham. Good night.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Sham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. You do have this recording. You did record some.
Thank you.
I don't think I'm gonna put it up though. It's only like 10 minutes.
Still good stuff.
I wish you would. It was very useful. Very, very useful.
Yeah. You had some good questions that people asked.
I agree. Please keep it up.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody. I'll do that.
Radhe Radhe.
Desham, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. Oh, it's Mekhala. Hey, Mekhala. Nice to see you. I'm gonna end meeting.
I had my video off.
Oh, okay. We'll talk soon because this is being recorded.
Okay.
Okay.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Recording stopped.